Call to order. Santiago. I'm sorry. I wasn't watching.
Craig Stallings.
Here.
Tiffany Glanville.
Here.
Karen Taylor. Julio Flores.
Here.
Shante Browdy.
Here.
Aisha Clark. Here. Juan Hernandez.
Aquí.
Kimberly Oliver.
Here.
We have a forum. Oh, no.
Thank you.
Sorry, Alexa Morales. Here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Forgive us for starting late. Naturally, this was a rocky budget season, and I just forgive us for taking up too much of your time. With that, I'm just going to move forward. So I just want to say good evening. As chairman of the Hartford Board of Education, I hereby call to order the June 19th regular meeting. I wish to extend a warm welcome to everyone present and to our TV viewers. The board, the superintendent, and I are pleased that you have joined us to celebrate achievement, review information, and make policy decisions related to the effective operation of the Hartford Public Schools. This is a regular meeting, and all meetings will be discussed and voted on this evening or have been posted as required by state law. As the Hartford Board of Education, we are here to set goals, listen to reports of the superintendent, approve goals, contracts, and personnel appointments, and make policy for the district. We are not here to make management decisions or solve problems of individuals. Management is the responsibility of the superintendent. And again, I have to stress that. Management is the responsibility of the superintendent. The monthly meetings of the board are open to the public. They are the time when the board conducts its business of governing the school system in a public arena. The regular meetings are not meetings with the public. Therefore, comments from the audience will be confined to the time designated for the public to address the board. Decorum and courtesy are important elements in every effective meeting. Please silence your cell phones or your communication devices and refrain from talking while others are speaking. Since it's legally mandated that these proceedings be accurately recorded, I may ask for an order periodically should noise begin to interfere with recording capabilities. I am pleased that you have taken the time this evening to join us. We are very proud of our school system. We thank you for your interest in the Hartford Public Schools. And now Mr. Flores will read this in Spanish while I turn my phone down.
Buenas noches. El presidente de la Junta de Educación de Hartford ha llamado a orden esta reunión ordinaria de la Junta del 19 de junio de 2018. Damos una cálida bienvenida a todas las personas presentes y a nuestros televidentes. La Junta y la Superintendente se complacen que se han unido a nosotros para celebrar logros, revisar información y tomar decisiones relacionadas con el funcionamiento efectivo de las escuelas públicas de Hartford. Esta es una reunión ordinaria y todos los asuntos que serán discutidos o votados en esta tarde han sido notificados como lo requiere la ley estatal. Como Junta de Educación de Hartford, estamos aquí para establecer metas, escuchar los informes de la superintendente, aprobar los presupuestos, contratos y nombramientos de personal y establecer normas para el distrito. No estamos aquí para tomar decisiones administrativas o resolver problemas individuales. La administración es la responsabilidad de la superintendente. Las reuniones mensuales de la Junta están abiertas al público. Son el momento en que la Junta lleva a cabo su tarea de gobernar el sistema escolar en un espacio público. Las reuniones regulares no son reuniones con el público. Por lo tanto, los comentarios de la audiencia se limitarán al tiempo designado para el público dirigirse a la Junta. El decoro y la cortesía son elementos importantes en reuniones públicas eficaces. Por favor, silencie sus teléfonos celulares o dispositivos de comunicación y absténganse de hablar mientras otros están hablando. Ya que es mandato legal de que todos los procedimientos sean grabados con precisión, es posible que tengamos que pedir orden periódicamente si el ruido interfiere con nuestras capacidades de grabación. Nos complace que se haya tomado el tiempo esta tarde para unirse a nosotros. Estamos muy orgullosos de este sistema escolar y le damos gracias por su interés en las escuelas públicas de Hartford.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Flores. Mrs. Glanville.
Read the name, sir.
Oh, no. Oh, Kim got it.
Yeah, this
Sure.
is Karen.
All right. Ms. Oliver.
We, as the board, in collaboration with the superintendent and district leadership, are committed to cultivating culture of excellence at all levels of HPS. We thank you for taking the time to attend tonight's board meeting. We appreciate you coming out to learn more about Hartford Public Schools and for sharing your thoughts and concerns. We have established a protocol to track and respond to concerns raised. We want you to know that we take your concerns seriously, and to that end, we will have staff available for immediate follow-up if follow-up is required. After you have finished speaking, a staff member will come up to you, ready to take your information down. They will follow up with an update within 48 hours. As a reminder, you have 3 minutes to speak, and at the 2-minute mark, Ms. Santiago will ring the bell letting you know you have 1 minute left. At the second bell, please wrap up your comments. Now, Mr. Julio Flores will read this in Spanish.
Thank you, Ms. Oliver. Nosotros, la Junta de Educación, en colaboración con la Superintendente y personal del distrito, estamos comprometidos a cultivar una cultura de excelencia en todos los niveles de las escuelas públicas de Hartford. Les agradecemos se haya tomado el tiempo para asistir a la reunión de la Junta esta noche. Les agradecemos su participación y su deseo de aprender más sobre las escuelas públicas de Hartford, y también por compartir sus pensamientos y preocupaciones. Nosotros tomamos sus preocupaciones muy seriamente y hemos establecido un protocolo para el seguimiento y respuesta a inquietudes planteadas. Tenemos personal disponible para seguimiento inmediato para los casos que lo requieren. Una vez que usted haya terminado de hablar, un miembro del personal estará disponible para tomar su información. Esa persona investigará su caso y se comunicará con usted dentro de 48 horas. Les recordamos que tienen 3 minutos para hablar. Cuando han pasado 2 minutos, la señorita Santiago sonará el timbre, dejándole saber que queda 1 minuto. Al segundo sonido, por favor, termine sus comentarios.
First we have Tony Ann Wilson.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
My name is Tonya Wilson. I'm a Hartford resident and I go to Hartford Public Schools. And today I will be speaking on behalf of the Junior Peace Brothers. Us Hartford kids need to stand up for what's right. And in this case, our education is what should be defended. Education is highly promoted, but what they leave out when forcing us to go to school is how it all works. I'm personally sick and tired of pretending that I'm happy with my education, because quite frankly, I'm not. There is no reason that I should have to suffer these Hartford Public Schools budget cut residual. They are taking away my important resources such as teachers, counselors, coaches, mentors, and more. But yet still, you guys expect to understand the students? It baffles the life out of me to understand their plan for the system they are trying to recreate. Why should I be quiet when you guys are jeopardizing the future? You guys fail to realize us youth are human, and when you guys continuously take staff out of our schools that children really do confide in and trust messes up our trust for you all. Why should I want to come to school if you guys continuously take staff out of our schools that I begin to trust? Statistically, it takes 19 months to trust someone, and we do not spend 19 months in schools. So if we as students start to trust the new staff that you guys seem to change every year, how do I come to feel comfortable in the place that I am supposed to be the most comfortable besides from home? I have so many questions regarding the logic of Hartford Public School system. You guys are saying that making these budget cuts will help the budget. How? By not even half of the school year, schools are running out of toilet paper, soap, and paper towels. And now instead of paper towels, we have hand dryers that is supposed to help keep the bathroom clean, but half of the time the dryers don't work. I want someone to explain to me why the board is giving us half of all they can give us. The board exists to help the students in the schools, but all you guys are doing are taking away people who actually have an impact on our lives. Students already don't want to go to these schools that you guys say that are being properly treated, because you guys treat us like prisoners. Let me give you guys a quick visualization. School to prison pipeline. In prison, they have a certain time to go outside, a certain time to eat, have to go everywhere together in unison. Doesn't that remind you guys of Hartford schools? The one thing we look forward to is going to school to the people that treat us right and are genuinely happy and appreciate us and care for us. Why would you guys take that away?
Thank you.
Ron Linker.
Hello. My name is Ron Linker, and I teach freshman science at Hartford Public High School in the Academy of Engineering and Green Technology. First of all, I would like to thank you for the 4 months paid vacation you provided me with this past school year. My dog thoroughly enjoyed it. I got a significant amount of work done in my house, wrote 4 songs, and finally finished reading Infinite Jest. Now, just what did I do to earn this 4-month break from my teaching duties? I had been volunteering my time to lead the NASA Human Exploration Rover Challenge. Our academy has been participating in this event for a number of years now. You can see a picture of our rover on the very top of the Achieve Hartford Facebook homepage. There was no funding for this program this year, so I was providing what I could through a GoFundMe page and out of pocket. I also had to obtain the materials for our project and bring them in. One of these materials was Bondo fiberglass resin. This material was already in the building and had already been used in the building. We were using this material to make composite cardboard wheels as one of our upgrades for this year's rover. That's it. I brought Bondo to school. It took 4 months for anyone to even meet with me about it. The final result was a verbal warning for not filing a safety data sheet on the substance I brought to school. By the way, there is one already filed in the shop for the material, as we had already had it on hand. What was the cost of my vacation? My students, most of whom are already years behind their peers, essentially lost their freshman year of high school science. 41% of them got a grade of 100% as the final grade for the 3rd quarter. Not just an A, but 100%. This was for turning in essentially a 4th grade level density worksheet that was the first thing I found when I searched for it on Google. What lessons were they taught? I was out for 81 days where a substitute was required. Many of these days one could not be found. At a cost of approximately $120 a day for a substitute, that comes out to almost $10,000, enough where we could have bought 4 or 5 nice new exploration rovers. Multiply that by the 100 or so staff members who have been placed on leave this year for mainly frivolous reasons, and you're in the $1 million range. That's $1 million spent not to teach children. That's $1 million that could have paid for programs, services, and materials that we don't have and desperately need. In my absence, my classes became so disruptive to the surrounding classrooms that they had to be moved to a different location because neighboring teachers could not teach through their disruptions. I believe this situation, along with the fact that 2 other teachers from our building were also out on leave, added to the difficulties that Hartford Public High School had as a whole this year. What is the cost of that? Last but not least, the NASA Human Exploration Rover Challenge is essentially dead at Hartford Public High School. I believe this vacation was a direct result of poor district policy. The district reacted with hysteria to the district's own hypocrisy. Was it worth it? Who knows? Maybe someone will be brave enough to take the personal risk of volunteering to lead the NASA rover project again. Maybe not. My students lost their freshman year of high school science, and that cannot be given back or bought. You are our leaders. You are supposed to look out for our students. You are also supposed to look out for your teachers. Please, in the future, lead responsibly.
Thank you. Hyacinth Yanni?
Good evening, everyone. Superintendent, board members, as always, thank you for serving. I'm Hyacinth Yanni and also a volunteer at Hartford Public High School. And as you know, I'm always coming here to speak on what's really happening in our building. And I'm not sure if you listen or understand what I come to you some of the time and talk about, but I'm hoping that one day, somewhere along the line, you will all listen. I want to say ditto to these young people that come forth to you, and I'm hoping that you guys can bill yourself and come before the board on a monthly basis to talk about the issues, because your superintendent, your boards do not know what happened in the building. Okay? You are the ears and eyes. You are the guys that serve, being served and not being served. So you guys need to take on that responsibility to come here and speak on what's happening. So I'm here to talk about the attendance policy. You know, we supposed to have an attendance policy. I'm not sure. Do we still have an attendance policy for school anymore? Because if that's so, it's not happening, okay? It's not happening. We need to set a system-wide attendance policy that every school in the system adhere to, okay? And we need somebody to make sure it's being enforced. Because without enforcement, it makes no difference of having a policy, all right? That's really important. We need consistency, all right? That's really important. The other thing that concerned me that leads into this, when kids don't show up to school, what do you think happened? At the end of the year, whether they show up or not, they end up getting a 50. And they walk tingling along the stage, we graduate. How on earth do we graduate kids like that? Okay? As the teachers speak right there, I've come before you guys and I've talked to you about teachers out of our building for months and who are teaching those kids. Substitute that does not teach, substitute that sits there. Okay? We don't need babysitters. We need somebody who can impact children's lives. And as superintendent, you need to know what's happening in your building. You need to take the time and go in and speak to your teachers. They need to be able to tell you what's happening because they're on the front line at all times. And I've spoken to you when you came on and I said, Superintendent, have a summit with your teachers. Hear what they have to say. I know you lead a busy life, but it's important for you to understand where your teachers are coming from, what they're feeling, and what's happening in their building, right? If you don't know what's happening, how can you set things down? We're looking at Hartford High, beginning of the next school year. Kids are going to 75 minutes class. Do you know what kids are we dealing with in Hartford High? The kids cannot sit for 20 minutes. So how you expect to take them to 75 minutes? And then the worst part about it, you don't have an attendance worker. We don't have an attendance worker to address those needs. So we'll be having a lot of them walking in the hall, doing nothing, hiding out, stuff like that. Okay? This is hurting our children. As the young people said, we are on the assembly line to jailhouse. Okay? We have good kids in Hartford High, but we have some majority of them that need services. 75% of our children need special service. And as I look at your agenda here, with all these money coming into the city and special grants and all that, I'm saying, why can't we have special attendance? Why attendance worker to help our children stay on task, make sure they're challenged in their classes, to do the good things, to make them stay in school. You know, you may wonder why I come here and speak. Well, I come to speak because when I see these kids, they're mine. And it hurt me to know that my children achieve, and these kids don't have the service to achieve what they need to achieve. I need for you to help these kids. We thought when you come in, you were going to be that change that we need. And I'm so hurt because these kids are not getting what they need. Okay? So I'm asking you, I know, I just want to tell you, okay? The other thing is, let's get rid of the uniform policy because this is not working. Okay? Our kids, it's not working. We thought this is not the island where we make sure they wear their uniform. This is America where people think they have the rights to whatever. It's not working. Let's get rid of that. Okay?
Thank you so much.
I'm just telling you that for now. Again, I just want to thank you all. You know, education is a crucial piece of kids' lives, and if they're not getting it, trust me, they'll end up telling you at the end of the day, I did not get it in school. All right? And we're going to say, well, how comes you didn't get it? Well, we didn't have the resource to get it. So please, help us. If 75% of our kids in Hartford High are special needs, we're going to need the resource to help them. All right?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so
And I
much.
want to just one more thing I want to say. Mr. Maziar is leaving. I want to let you know he's a super great guy. He only needs the resource to do the job. Okay?
Well, thank you so
And I
much.
will meet you from Hartford High.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Madison Frame.
Gotta leave.
Hi, my name is Madison Frame. I'm a former Hartford Public School student, and today I'm here with you all with concerns about the current budget cuts that you, the Board of Education, are attempting to make, or probably already have made, because on a constant basis you tend to make decisions without talking to the people that it actually affects. Yes, we're sitting here, I'm telling you over this, but this is not a discussion. This is just me talking to you and you possibly listening. You, the Board of Education, have decided to make cuts to people who have direct contact with the students while hiring people who have no contact with the students. We refuse to sit back and watch as money is taken from our schools for who knows what reason and see our schools put in an uncomfortable position and be left with no idea of what to do. This will not only affect the teachers, but the students as well. We've already had countless problems with staff members and parents complaining about the budget cuts. We barely have enough textbooks. We barely have enough money to give computers to every student, and we barely have enough teachers. The majority of Hartford schools are understaffed. And I'm pretty sure you've heard this complaint before. Although I'm no longer a student in Hartford schools, my sister is. Everyone standing behind me is, and these are my friends. And I refuse to see my friends not prepared for their future when that's what high school is supposed to do for you, when that's what all education is supposed to do for you, prepare you for the world. And a lot of these kids in Hartford are not prepared for the world because our schools don't prepare us for it. I'm tired of seeing this school system as a revolving door. We need people who are dedicated and ready to work on a project because yes, we are a project and yes, we have a lot of issues, but these issues can be fixed. We just need people who are dedicated to fixing these problems and sticking with the process. Because yes, it's a long process, I understand. I graduated, I'm still with this process. So we need people, older people who are willing to do the same thing as the students. So on behalf of the Hartford faculty and students, we humbly ask that you refrain from any further decisions with the budget until you converse with the people who it actually affects. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Downs. Oh, thank you.
Oh, but I can put a statement on the record if you want.
Is there a statement?
Yeah, well, he just wanted to, if we're going to sell or rent a vacant building, do it at high cost, rename the schools that are closed, transfer those names to existing schools, and make sure that anyone that occupies any of our buildings are tax producers. Michael Downs.
Thank you. Andrew Clark.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Andrew Clark. I'm the current SGC chair at Annie Fisher Montessori. You may recognize me from May 15th when Erin and I were here. Erin Sheehan's the PTO chair. We're presenting during the budget public hearing on Annie Fisher's proposed budget cuts. I recognize the statement that you read about listening and that someone would get to us within 48 hours. Someone did. We did have a meeting with Yvette from the district on our budget cuts. And then on Wednesday, we were sent our proposed budget, which had absolutely no changes to it. So they listened, but they didn't necessarily act on it, and as best as we could tell. But regardless of Annie Fisher, I want to echo some of the sentiments of the students and the teacher that spoke and Hyacinth that spoke, and it's more about process. I sit up here as an SGC chair, believing when I came into this role some 5 years ago that I was going to be a partner in the process, and I felt nothing but an adversary. Not because I wanted to, but because I felt I was put in that position. And I'm not the only one. We've had members of our SGC that, because of their experience in relating to Hartford Public Schools, have left the district within a year after serving on the SGC. I want to read with you something from your own policy, which is based on state law. The School Governance Council is the primary local school decision-making body of the school devoted to achieving its mission and vision. Towards that end, it will focus resources on student achievement, development of improvement plans, and allocation of resources. We can't do that. We do not have the information provided to us to not only fulfill our role that's statutorily obligated, but the one that you have also put forth through BOE policy. When I ask, how has the budget come about? All we get is our own school budget. Our schools are pitted against each other. All I can find on the school board site is the goals of student-based budgeting. That made sense to me. And the whole point of that was, when it was from 2008, 2009, was transparency. It eliminates many complex staffing ratios and provides funding through a simplified allocation plan. Instead of hiding the difficult choices inherent in budgeting, the new formula brings those choices out in the open for all to see and evaluate. We don't have that now. I don't know what we have. I went to an SGC meeting a year and a half ago on the budget and was summarily told that that's changed, but I still have yet to find out what it's changed to. So I've done my own research. I went to the Connecticut School Finance Project. I find that we get $13,000 for inter-district magnet student. And that Hartford roughly gets $19,000, maybe more like $17,000 now for a Hartford student. When you add all that up, what our schools should be getting is well over $5 million. We get, in this budget, less than 3. Okay, you take away the 16% that you say goes to the district. All right, that'd be $4.6 million. That's still a difference of $1.3 million. My question is, where is that money going to? And I don't know, and I can't find that out. And the problem is, we are actually funded better than some of the district schools, who should be getting 19 grand per student. Where is that money going? Provide that information so we can be partners in this process and not adversaries. Thank you.
Thank you. Erin. Conveniently right here. Good evening. I just want to reiterate what Andrew said. I am the president of the PTO at Annie Fisher Montessori. I'm here to represent parents and the children and the teachers. I do want to just touch base on what Andrew was saying, in that our biggest problem is that we don't know where the money is going. We have no clear idea of cuts that have been made to central office, even though we're told that they have been made. We don't know what money was attached to it, what positions were attached to it. We don't know why our school gets a certain amount of money per student and another school gets either more or less. We feel like it's pitting magnet schools against neighborhood schools, neighborhoods against neighborhoods. It's not the way to bring a city together, and it's certainly not the way to improve the school system. When parents want to be involved, we're told, don't push too hard. It could get personal. Those things are very distressing. My son has been in this school district for 5 years, and every year it gets more difficult. Every year I say to myself, I don't know if we can stay here and do this. And we go to a good school. We go to a school with a great building. It's not falling apart. We have wonderful teachers. But I don't know how they're going to do it this year with our final 2 cuts that we told we're having. I mean, I just don't know. And I hope that our teachers will be able to deal without our 2 very important staff members, the adaptation coordinator in Louis Lumbris, and our Montessori coach in Sandra Gallo. They have both been with our school since it opened. And then I'll echo some of the students who said, what about keeping a consistent staff? I mean, these people are like family members to our students, but the data just didn't just didn't work out that they were seen to be needed. And again, that's because nobody talked to the people at the school. Pull the data. Well, the data is not accurately representing how different schools use different positions and how important those positions are. And I can tell you these last 2 positions that are being cut from our school are vital. And I'm really worried for this next school year. So I ask you to rethink the budget, take a look, have some conversations with people at the school, but not just conversations. Well, actually, not just listen. Come back with the information that we request, because we haven't gotten any information that we've requested to date. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Alyssa Pearson.
Good evening, Superintendent and board members. I'm dressed a little casually. I didn't intend to come down here, but when I saw this budget item, I felt I had to come and speak. I always appreciate, as a Hartford resident, the ability to come before you. I'd like to repeat something I said last month, and that was, you need public relations help. Okay, the contract for this Causeway agency, I did a little research when I saw the item. I saw who they were. They're in the 2nd or 3rd year of the contract. I recall Mr. Sullivan, when he was applying for the job here, one of the ideas I liked from him was that he proposed to put all the contracts that everybody had negotiated on the wall, go through, review them, and rip almost every single one of them up, you know, as a means of reviewing them. I don't know that this Causeway agency contract is necessary. It's in the 2nd or 3rd year. I'm sure you've gotten the drill, or you've gotten the gist of what they're doing. More importantly, you need some public relations help. You need some communications help. The number one factor that should be repeated and exploded for all of these people is the federal funds. I was stunned during the budget presentation. I want you to take that chart and I want you to reprint it and put it in every single document you send out. It is incredible to me, the reduction of federal funds, that we are not getting the funds like New Haven, Waterbury, New London, the comparison that you showed us. I don't know what it is. You need a PR agency to go out there and lobby, to work with our legislators, to work with the mayor. You know, in the old days, the mayor and the Board of Ed used to work together and go to the legislature or go to Washington even and lobby for funds. This is incredible to me, and it's not your fault. I understand all the cuts. I'm very sorry about that, and I'm sorry to the schools and to the students, certainly. But people need to understand the federal funds have been cut dramatically. How do we get them back? When we get them back, then you can put the folks back in the position. But until you get some help to start communicating your needs, and also do a little PR repair with the teachers, do some public relations repair with the students, the parents, etc. You did a great job on rolling out. It was so comprehensive. The charts and the graphs about how you redid the school system and you reallocated the schools within the buildings we have, and you reduce the number of buildings. That was a phenomenal presentation. You need to continue that excellence in terms of communicating with the public, with the state, with our legislators. It shouldn't be all on you. There's something wrong here. I don't understand that gross drop in federal funding. And I believe that should be your number one focus. Do what you can to go out there, get help, and solicit those funds. And thank you so much for allowing me to address you.
Thank you.
Thank you. S. Hudson.
My name is Ms. Hudson, and I'm here to speak on behalf of a special ed program that I feel is failing the children here in the Hartford school system. And listening to these children speak, whom are stating that they're getting out of school and they're not being taught effectively or properly, it echoes what my child in middle school is experiencing. Because systems that are to be in place are not in place, and it's not comprehensive for the children to learn. Children are being passed along to go on, so you don't have to, the teachers don't have to face the bureaucracy and be chastised because the schools are failing, the children are failing. So they do what they have to do to pass them along. My daughter has a 2.9.4 average. No way in hell my daughter is a 2.94 student. No way. My daughter has a PPT that is not effective. My daughter is a special ed student here in Hartford. She has no extended services set up for the summer. My daughter gets support from the school. The PPT is not effective. It doesn't do anything to reflect on what it is. It's just paper. My daughter's in JZ at Trinity School, which gives them 2 hours, 2 days a week of tutorial additional service. That's 4 hours. I pay for an additional 4 hours on my own of tutorial service. That's telling you the school system is failing my child. Okay, I'm calling, I'm fighting for services. You have to go through long fights and horror. It's too much of a hassle. I am a product of Hartford. I grew up, I went to Hartford school system. I started off at Bill Webster, I went to Burns, I went to Cork when they first had Magnet. I left, I went to South Catholic High, I graduated. I went to University of Hartford, to consortiums with Trinity and Hartford College for Women. I am a product of Hartford. And my child should be a product of Hartford. And she should be able to get the education that I got and be able to support herself. The way that she's being taught right now, where she's at, my child will not be able to fill out a damn application at Burger King. Cannot. And she has a 2.94 average. Please tell me what's wrong with the picture. I brought it to their attention that she's not retaining information, she's regressing. And if I did not bring it to the school attention, no one ever brought it to my attention that there's something wrong. I brought it to the attention that my child is not learning. My child is not learning. I'm asking you to please help me help my child learn. I work through the system. We're all educated. There's no reason any of our children should not be educated. I run a support system. My family run a clinic in 2 schools in Jamaica that I run. And I have less funds and support, but my kids are being educated and are going somewhere. What is wrong with the picture in a society like this where we have more funding and people available? This is an issue. I thank you for listening to me, but I'm asking you, please help me, help my children, get your special ed teachers and their board staff on board. Please help people to function. Don't chastise the teachers when they do wrong, but support them. Let them realize where their errors are and help them to move along to get things done so that they do not feel the need to give a grade to pass a child along. We don't need kids graduating that can't read and write. Please, have a good day.
Thank you. That concludes public comment.
Okay, thank you. Second, I have to get back. I was following along my agenda. All right. Okay. So we're gonna go to reports. Item number 5. I will actually just make my report brief. In fact, my report is more of an editorial, and so I will just sort of respond to some of what we heard today. This was a difficult budget process. We had a new entity in our budget process that we've never experienced before, which was the MAR board. And so we had to fit our budget process within that budget process. And so that impacted our schedule, and that impacted our process quite a bit. That is no excuse for lack of engagement, especially when it comes to SGCs, because that's something I think the board really counts on, and to hear that that's not happening is something that we should and will get to the bottom of. But at any rate, I've also have been public about a city bailout. The city received $570 million for their bailout, and I'm not criticizing the city. However, we were flat funded for the next 5 years. So we have been flat funded for a period of 15 years, and that does take a toll. And so I need people to understand that some of the issues that we have with our school system, some of the deficits that we have are long-standing deficits, and we have not arrived at this position overnight, and we're not going to get out of it overnight. And a lot of it is a result of our continual flat funds. And so I definitely want to acknowledge that. Again, this is no way, I am no way trying to criticize the city or anything like that, but I'm simply stating a fact. So if you, I don't want anyone to walk away thinking that the board believes that we shouldn't fight for funds and that we are not advocating, because we are. We are talking behind the scenes, and we are expressing the sentiments that we hear today. And so I'm just going to leave that editorial there, though I have a lot more to say on the matter. I just wish that, especially the students, they were here to hear some of the exchanges from board members as we talk about the budget and as we get into our process. And so again, I just ask, and I'm glad that many of you have stayed to hear and listen to what we have to say, because again, we agree with you, and I'm speaking on behalf of everyone here, sitting here, including the superintendent. We agree with you. It's very difficult sometimes to take our agreement and actualize that into process. And so we are making that attempt. We've been at this for a year. We've been at the District Model of Excellence for a year. We've had some progress, and we're trying to make some headway. So bear with us. And then the last thing I'll say is we have a new CFO, and this is his new process, and he was hired within the process. So that also is affecting our process. So we'll get better. I promise you that. We will develop a process. We are in the process of developing a budget that everyone can follow and we can participate in. So we are working on those things. We acknowledge those things, and at no way are we trying to hide or run and say that we are firing at all cylinders when we're not. So I just want to acknowledge that, and that concludes the chair report. So, Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Chairman Stallings. My report is going to be brief, given that we're going to get into budget mitigations and all of those details in a bit. Just want to congratulate our students, actually our graduates. We finished last night with all of the graduations, and so thank you all, board members, for being there. So congratulations to all of our students. I want to highlight some very preliminary data that we received. It was released last Friday from the State Department of Education. Our Smarter Balance assessments. This is one of our key performance indicators, and I just want to reference that, though the official scores, if you will, are not confirmed until August. I'll share just an overview of some of the positive results thus far. When we look at the trend in literacy, as you know, when we had a conversation last time and we dug deep into our literacy data, we had 18% of our students in third grade that were proficient. And I am happy to report that the preliminary scores reflect that we had an increase to 22%, and so from 18 to 22%, which is a 3.8 increase. And so while it might not seem like it's a significant gain, know that the trend has turned into the positive, whereas last year we had seen a decrease. With regard to our math, you know, the Smarter Balance assessment goes from grades 3 through grade 8. And so in math, we saw gains in all grades. And so gains consistently across all of the grades this year, higher gains than we did in last year. Our largest gains in math were in grade 5 with 6 full percentage points. And our highest performing grade level is grade 3, and so, at 23.7 for math. And so that's, positive news for us. We're headed in the right direction. I know that there's a significant amount of work that we have to do, but I felt that it was important to highlight some positive news, given that, it's been a hard year for all of us. And so I want to highlight and congratulate, our teachers and our parents and our leaders for their hard work. And that will conclude my comment for now.
Wow. Okay. I'm surprised. Committee, even no offense, but I was buckled down for a long one. Committee, Finance and Audit. I'm going to skip that because we are going to have a budget presentation, but I will extend that to any members. So Kim or Julio, you want to say anything?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So we're going to skip Finance and Audit and go to Policy. Ms. Taylor is not here. So does the committee member want to make a comment on the Policy Committee?
No, I'll defer to the next meeting for Ms. Taylor to present on it.
Okay.
Unless, did you, yeah.
No, all right.
No, that's, yeah.
Okay, so moving right along, School Choice Facilities Committee, Ms. Glanville.
Thank you, yes. So, we had our meeting, oh goodness, I don't remember the date, last week. And we had a pretty long agenda, and actually, we had actually an extended meeting because we had a couple of carryover items from previous agendas, and actually we got through almost the entire agenda except for the last item, which is transportation, which is very important and related to long-term budget planning, but we're going to carry that over to the next meeting and really do a deep dive on that. So the items that we did get through, we had a review and discussion of the chef's strategic plan. Dr. Torres Rodriguez presented to us on that. She attended a meeting with the Chef Coalition where they presented the plan to her, and she relayed that information in summary, which we actually have attached to our, I think it should be attached to the board packet. What that is, the salient sort of summary points was the belief in that quality and integrated education are like interconnected and cannot be separated. Building a stronger sense of trust in the lottery process for parents in neighborhood schools. And Ms. Taylor, who's one of our committee members, added that I guess there was Chef Coalition applied for and received a Graustein grant that actually had a lot of information in it that she will be getting us a copy of that grant to look at. It actually involves some programming around at least one of our neighborhood schools. So we were actually looking to get more information on that. We also reviewed a letter that we received from Meredith asking us, the district, not to enroll above the last 3-year average of students from Meriden. It turned out that they cited some legislation that doesn't actually apply to our schools, but that and the third item that we had review and discussion of was the capital prep study were sort of used for conversation, discussion around some of the broader issues around our magnet schools and enrollment challenges that we have. And the capital prep study was a study that was done 2 years ago by Capital Prep that we looked at, and it should be in your packet. It's pretty interesting. They did a study of the economic diversity and other aspects of diversity in their student body besides race. I think they looked at parent income, parent education, economic status, geographic diversity. So that was a pretty interesting study, and we had discussed, what the options would be for Hartford and sort of looking at these measures of diversity here. And as usual, we heard that, obviously the standard of diversity is not something that we as a district unilaterally can determine. It's something that we always have to agree to and through the SHEP litigation. So that stands as it is, which is a strictly racial definition of diversity. We had a choice update. The major takeaway there was that some instructional capacities at our schools are actually higher than the budget is allowing for. And then we're also experiencing some capacity issues in other schools. One of the major points here, and I want to reiterate it here, is that finance really needs to be brought into this conversation around the capacities in the seats. As we've moved away from sort of the pure student-based budgeting, more clarity I think is needed, and we raised this, our choice staff raised this in the committee meeting around how we're actually allocating the money, the magnet monies, like as we've moved away from student-based budgeting, the $13,000 per student that we receive from the state for every suburban student is no longer like a straight pass-through to the individual school where that student is enrolled. It's more of like a total magnet operating grant that allows us to operate a system of magnet schools. But as a result, it's something that hopefully as we have more sustainably sized schools, because of the model of excellence, it's something that we can revisit in terms of student-based budgeting as to how we can be more clear and transparent about how money is following the student, and also the weights that we may or may not have for need and various other things that we do in our student-based budgeting. And I'll just add one of the reasons we know that we did move away from the sort of pure student-based budgeting is as we've had more and more smaller and smaller schools, student-based budgeting is not something that works well with very small schools, but there's many reasons why we really want to revisit that discussion from a choice perspective, from a enrollment perspective, and so that's a note to finance. We had a report, CREC had a working session that our Dr. Vasquez Matos attended and our board member, Ms. Taylor, attended. It was a session that was convened that included representatives from the surrounding towns, including Hartford. The purpose was to come up with recommendations for the state on how to create a sustainable magnet system, and some of the ideas that were apparently raised in the meeting was a controlled choice option, not having duplicate beams within the same zone, universal start times for elementary and secondary schools, asking the state to reallocate funds, cross-partnership pathways to create transportation savings, and increasing tuition was mentioned as an option, returning magnet schools to their local education agencies, and lastly, an apportionment plan where each town would purchase their allotted seats. So these were just some of the initial ideas that were reported to us that were discussed in the session. One of the asks that the committee certainly had was that we have a forum where we as a board can sort of give more of our collective input into this process so that we can, to the extent we have thoughts on any of these different things that are being considered, we can have those be shared as Ms. Taylor and Dr. Vasquez Matos continue to participate in this. I think later in the summer they're going to have another meeting. We had a review of the sand roof school project, which is on our which is on our agenda for tonight, and I'll speak to that when we have it, so I won't take that time up here. But I will say in regard to the capital improvement project aspect of our agenda, we also discussed that the Buckley and Burns education specs, which I know I've reported to this board at least twice in my previous committee reports, would be coming before us for this June meeting for our approval of those ed specs. As you can see, they're not before us today, and the reason is because Burns was not included in the budget that the city adopted in the capital improvement project budget for the city, so that project will not be coming before us now. And Buckley, originally we had been looking at ed specs that were for like comprehensive renovation of the facility, in light of also our central office being moved in there, and the funds that were approved in the budget that the city passed were $5 million, which is like significantly less than to allow us to even do any kind of further renovation other than to just move central office to Buckley at the conclusion of the current lease. So those things they have significant implications for the district model of excellence. because both of those projects were aligned with our district model of excellence, meaning that Burns was supposed to be renovated as a co-location of Burns and the Hartford Pre-K magnet. So that calls into question, whether that will happen, or the timeline of what that will happen, and same with, obviously, Buckley is still, obviously where the plan is right now, but those things really need more committee work at this point because of the developments with the city's budget and what the city was and was not able to approve because of obviously the oversight that we're under, and just the scarce resources. We had a discussion around the naming of Montessori at Batch Elder, the Montessori magnet that's going into Batch Elder, and a couple different options were put forward for how to name that school and have it be consistent with Montessori and Annie Fisher, or Annie Fisher Montessori. So we'll be making a decision on that. There actually isn't a vote required of us on that. We just generally had a discussion around that, and we received input. We actually received input from the school communities that was relayed back to us, and then also we had Ms. Browdy was there, and she put her parent hat on and gave some input on that as well. And lastly, though this was not the order in our meeting, we had a discussion of the incubation bond funds being carried over for the Erdkinder at Annie Fisher Montessori, and we put a request in at the time of the meeting. We had put a request in to the RESCO office, to the state, to ask that those funds be extended. And we were still waiting at the time of the meeting for a response on that. We subsequently did receive a response, which I believe has also been conveyed to the school community, that the state will not extend those incubation bond funds because they were supposed to have been expended in 2016. So we had some good discussion around Erdkinder, and I think we need to have more discussion around that, and how it can serve as a pathway and a pipeline for retention, for just creating more options and opportunities for students. So hopefully we'll continue to discuss that, especially in light of the new information that we now have that those funds were not extended. And sorry for the long report, but it was a long meeting. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you. And Teaching and Learning Committee, Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Stallings. I will be quick. I will try to be as brief as I can. We did not have a June meeting. Our last meeting was on May 10th, and we only had 2 agenda items that day. We had, the first one was a presentation, a little bit of background first, actually. So part of the OCA action plan that we voted on last year as a board, concern number 5 around special vulnerability of children with disabilities to possible abuse and neglect. That was number 5. So with that in mind, we had a presentation with the Connecticut Center for Children with Special Needs on the iGoal program that they have that's implemented within our district in certain schools. I do have a copy of that PowerPoint. I'm not going to get too much into the details because we have a long agenda today, but I do have a copy of that PowerPoint. If anybody wants it, feel free to pull me to the side after this. If not, feel free to get in touch with Ms. Santiago, and we'll get you the copy of the PowerPoint. The second agenda item for that day was might have been the last day of the legislative session, I can't remember, but the General Assembly passed a Senate Bill SB 455, an act concerning minority teacher recruitment and retention. So we had a presentation from folks from talent management within the district, obviously, who presented on our diversity recruitment plan, which we have. We have one. I don't know how many folks know that. So we do have that, and I do have a copy of it as well, which I don't mind sharing. We spoke a little bit about the Relay program, which is it's an alternate route to certification program. For example, if paraprofessionals want to get certified to be teachers, they can use the Relay program. So again, I have those attachments ready to be shared with anybody who's interested. A lot of our agenda items going forward, and I mean, since the creation of our committee, has been focused around sped delivery, right? So we've developed a very, very strong partnership with Dr. Sellers, who's our executive director. Let me get this right. Student Support Services and Special Education. Sorry, it's long. And we've developed a strong partnership that I think is going to be very, very crucial for us as a board, especially for this committee, since we've brought it back from, I don't know how long it's been since this committee's existed, but the conversations that we've had have been very, very positive, have been fruitful, and we hope, again, it's just getting started. So if you're interested in anything at all related to teaching and learning, let us know. We try to change the agenda up every now and then. We had a presentation not too long ago around our math curriculum. We'll be having one around science eventually, right? So we're changing things up. That is it. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Okay, student report.
Thank you.
Awesome. Ms. Morales.
Our last student senate meeting of the year was on June 6th. During this meeting, we welcomed old and new members and discussed our goals for the next school year. We assessed ideas and ways in which we can bring together all of our school concerns in one central concept that can be presented to the superintendent and board members. Our plan/goal is at the beginning of every meeting to not only talk about what is going on in our schools, but to take the most pressing matter and create a proposal. We will put our information forward that will then turn into a piece that can be presented. At this meeting, we decided that one important project that we would like to work on is the food choices, proportions, quantity, and quality in high schools. In high school, the proportion sizes are way too small, and students have to use other peers' lunch codes to fill their stomachs. One lunch should do, but students feel like they need seconds. In addition, middle school lunch proportions are the same for high schoolers, even though there is a wide age gap. We also have student athletes, which means that they are at school for more than 8 hours, and they depend on their meals for full nutrition and energy. At some schools, such as Buckley and Global Communication, they run out of food, meaning that students fear that they will not be able to get a promised meal. With what we have discussed at our meeting, we look forward to making a well-informed presentation that includes all the data and facts needed to show the student concerns. We also hope to research, find, and complete recommendations for how we can improve. This is just one of our goals. We also hope to discuss other matters such as permanent teachers and necessary books for school libraries. We are determined to have mini presentations or half-year projects so that we can showcase student information frequently by focusing on one concern at a time. By focusing on one concern or one idea, we are showing our full commitment and attention, which in turn will mean that we will continue our efforts to ensure changes are made and that student voices are heard and students are working to help their community. As the year has come to an end, the Student Senate feels that they have made great strides in empowering the other students from our schools to speak up about the things that they see, to share their opinions, and to find solutions. We hope to carry this accomplishment forward. We would like to thank the Superintendent, Dr. Torres Rodriguez, for coming to our Student Senate meetings, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to meet with us. We thank you for listening to our ideas and thoughts and coming to us with your questions and concerns. We appreciate your support and we look forward to meeting with you next year. Thank you for allowing me to give a report.
Thank you.
Thank you. Give me a second. Thank you for that. And if we could just have you follow up with nutrition on some of what we heard. Mr. Hernandez asked for point of privilege.
Yeah, thank you so much. It'll be quick. I'm going to put our student rep on the spot for a second. She had no idea I was going to do this, and she's not leaving, right? She'll be here next year. She's a rising senior. But, so most folks in this audience don't know that Alexa has been working on this service project for a little while now, right? And she calls it Stop for Art, where she's actually transforming a school bus that was donated. And she's repurposing it into a crafting bus that will go around to shelters, schools, clubs, providing younger children with a free, upbeat, and fun environment to express their artistic abilities. So I just wanted to let folks in the audience know that we've been lucky as a board to have awesome student reps, including Alexa, and including some in the past, right, who've gone on to graduate from high school and go to some of the most amazing colleges. So I just wanted to put her on the spot and give her a shout out, because I don't think we do that enough. So.
Thank you for that. That was definitely needed. Thank you, Ms. Hernandez. And I've known your grandfather for years, and I just want to say thanks, Dad, for being so supportive of that. And so moving on, we are going to get into the business agenda, and that is item of importance. Item number 1, the resolution adoption of the 2018-2019 budget for $115,799,210 Finance and Audit Committee. Madam Superintendent.
Thank you. So I'm going to go back to some of the slides that we've by now been familiar with regard to the budget, knowing that last time we had a meeting of the whole. There was conversation around the budget deficit that we still had, and so every time we come together, there's been a little more mitigation added. And so tonight, I'd like to present where we are with the mitigation, and then think through the next steps. I know that we have until the end of June to think through and pass a budget, but nonetheless, I wanted to just give you an update as to where we are as of today, if you will, with the mitigation. So some of this is going to be somewhat repetitive, but we'll go through, and if you have any questions, let me know. This is just back to where we were in the district model of excellence and where we hope to be in 2022. I'm kind of skipping through some of these, but I'll highlight the salient issues for us. Certainly deep student needs, low persistence in performance, fiscal constraints, declining enrollment, and an increase in our student needs. For more local context as it relates to the budget process this year, we know that the district model of excellence vote took place a month later than anticipated. That was at the end of January, and so our budget process did not begin when it usually does, which is either in November or December of the previous year. We did move away this year from SBB, given that student-based budgeting, given that many of our schools had the lower enrollment. It is our hope that we can get back to a funding formula that is equitable for our schools. That is the work that we hope to actually do this year with our consultants' education resource strategies, that we've been able to secure external funding for that work. And so, as we progress into next year and into the budget process for next year, I am confident that the process will be different and that it will have an equity lens to it. Highlighting our declining enrollment and where we've been, the downward decline for our students. This is that 5-year mitigation, $105 million. Chairman Stallings, you referenced that this will be the 10th year of flat funding, and we know that we can count on an additional 4 years of flat funding, and so we'll have more years to come in terms of flat funding from the city, given that the city has its own financial constraints. And so this is an important slide for us to think through. It's a pattern for us to have to mitigate anywhere from $25 to $30 million every year. Clearly not sustainable, not a healthy environment for us to be in this financially. Some of our financial trends with regard to our revenue also decreases in revenue. And so essentially, we're at the same level of funding that we were 9 years ago, while we are well aware of the fact that our student needs continue to increase and our costs continue to increase. I will bring us to where we left off at the last meeting. So when we came together in May 1st, our gap, our mitigation that was necessary was at $24.8 million. And within a week, we did manage to have additional mitigations, leaving us at 14.5. At that time, some of the highlights that I'll speak to included, identifying some contracts that we were not going to continue with this year, some reductions at central office as well, but that still left us with $14.5 million. And so what I wanted to highlight here were, the mitigation strategies, and I'll kind of go through these. And some of these are with regard to some of our funding that we are expecting. And so additional entitlement grant funding at 2.8, as you see there. Federal hurricane and disaster relief funding. This is monies that, at the federal level that will ultimately make it to the state level for families that have been impacted by the hurricanes. It's a one-time funding stream, yes. We have submitted all of our documentation for the State Department of Education as required. We're just waiting to hear. Consolidation of central office departments. This, is a little different from the last time we came together. I believe the last time that we came together, there were 11 positions that had been reduced at central office. And I believe that I mentioned that would probably most likely double, and it has. And so there's been a reduction of 22 positions at central office. And just to kind of humanize that process, we finished letting everyone know at central office last week. And so, there's been a need to also think through the restructuring of central office and the realignment of central office. We know that we need to lift a lot of the work, and so this also required us to look at additional savings, if you will, by removing some of the middle management level positions and reducing and realigning those, resulting in a 1.9 mitigation. The state increase in ECS for displaced students. This is an additional funding that we may be receiving specifically for all of the students that we took in as a result of the hurricanes. And there is a funding formula, if you will, that has been attached. And so students that are English learners, have special education needs, may get additional funding. We're, again, waiting to see how that's going to come, how and when that's going to come to us. But we've added it here as an expected source of funding for us. Suburban special ed and 504 services as well. Our special education department and Dr. Sellers are working very hard to really look through all of the services that our students are in need of, and any mitigations there as well. I will point next to the fact that I've added the school crossing guards. As you know, in the past, the district has provided that as in-kind support to the city for, that is a function, actually an operation of the police department. And so I've added that back in, given that, we have to identify as many mitigations as possible. Next is the additional grant rollover, and that entailed the finance department combing through diligently each of the grants that had been given to the district in previous years, and whether or not there was opportunity to roll over any funds. And so you see there that $1 million was allowable for a rollover. Healthcare savings there as well, $700,000. I recall last time we had a conversation around a health dependent audit, And so as a result of the audit, we were able to, identify $700,000 there as well. Utility in terms of some of our facilities. We know that some of our schools are closing at the end of the year and we don't have a projected use of the facility. And so that's some savings there as well. In addition to another smaller mitigation there, and that's the furloughs for non-bargaining central office staff. My cabinet, myself, and other non-bargaining staff having to take 5 furlough days, non-paid, 5 non-paid furlough days. And lastly, an increase in the budget of 1.2, reflecting an investment in teachers and support staff and administrators to schools, given that we want to make sure that we meet the needs that are in our schools. We know that many of our schools have concentration of needs, and so we have to make sure that when we look at services that are required, special education services, social workers, that we were providing the needs necessary. And so even with all of that, that was as of last Friday, we were still short $2.5 million, and so want to talk through proposed mitigations to get at a full mitigation. And so this is where we are today. So from yesterday and into today, right, the work continues, and this is what we've been able to identify, including a reduction in our budgeted severance expense for staff that either leaves the district or retires. There is a certain allocation there. However, we propose a reduction in that as well. Reducing our overtime costs. And what we've done is, compare last year's expenses to this year's expenses. And we feel that even with these reductions, if we continue within that trend, we will be able to cover the expenses for this year. Additional $1 million in reduction of supplies. This is through the entire school district, not only at our schools, but also at our central office as well. A $300,000 reduction in 10 para-educators. And so in speaking with our special ed departments, we have students that graduate this year, and so we believe that, within 10 para-educators, we'll still be able to deliver the service for our students. And then lastly, efficiencies around technology as well, finding ways that we can look at our cell phone contracts and see how we can find efficiencies there. These are some of the proposed mitigations. We can certainly have a conversation around that. I know that there are a lot of other questions with regard to details, of the budget, but certainly has been a challenging budget process for us. And while, we would like to be in a position to, fund everything and every need that we have to prioritize. And so I wish I could say that, the budget includes added, programs, but I still struggle with the fact that, for example, at the high schools, I'm trying to work hard with trying to identify external funding sources to have a strong strategy for our high schools, primarily our neighborhood high schools. We know that, chronic absenteeism continues to be a challenge at our high schools, and so trying to find external budget resources to fund all of our needs. So I'll pause there for now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that detailed report. No, fine. I think we're gonna take the questions. So what I'm going to do is open it up to questions. Now, if you have A/B questions, or like part 2 questions, sort of condense the questions so that we can get an answer, a full answer. Would you like anyone to sit?
Yeah, I just want to actually call to mind the last 2 slides on your packet. It's just an overview of the last 5 years in terms of the reductions at the school sites and then at central office. And the final slide in the packet is details as to the FTEs, the position changes at the school sites and at central office. And so we've had an increase at the school sites of 1.7 positions and reduction of 22.2 at central office. So before we begin, I'd like to also call Dr. Sellers up for any questions. Dr. Colon Rivas, for any questions, please join. Yvette Aviles. And I see Claudio in the back. Just be on deck, Claudio, in case there are any facilities related, detailed questions.
Okay. Like I said, thank you. And again, you guys are simply just to help us with content and fill in some gaps. So it's not the hot seat, and I can't grill anyone today. So with that, I'm going to open up to questions. Is anyone? Mr. Flores.
Yeah, I have, as a comment, several questions. One, I'm really very pleased to see that we have a budget where we do not have a reduction in teaching staff, and we actually have an increase in teaching staff, and we have an increase in social workers, and that really is very encouraging to me. I'd like some clarification, and really for the larger group, about what's happening with the coaches, because I've heard complaints about coaches being pulled out of schools, and my understanding is that some of that work is sort of being centralized so that coaches can serve several schools. So I'd like to hear some clarification on that, and I have a concern on this last part of mitigation around paraeducators. And I see that we have an increase in paraeducators, then back here we're recommending, or we're proposing as an additional budget mitigation to take some out. And I know that the paraeducators are really critical in our schools, so I'm really concerned about that. And I'd like to know if that 10 is a reduction to the paraprofessionals that are shown of 14. So to speak to those items?
Yeah, so we'll go first to the E-Lead, our professional learning model, which is where the coaches fit in, and it is a centralized approach. And so I'll ask Yvette to speak to the context as to how we got there, right, and the need to really have a universal approach to how we provide instructional coaching throughout the district and where we are in terms of the numbers. And even if you can also go into the model and how it actually is kind of being operationalized at this moment, because we've already begun doing some of the work.
So eLead is actually a system of professional learning, and one component of the professional learning is the coaches. And the system entails virtual learning and many other components, but today we're going to focus on the coaching piece. And so initially, we had 69 coaches across the district that were already employed in the district. And schools had different numbers of coaches, and they had different roles and responsibilities. And so in our model of DME, to really work towards a model of excellence, one of the things that's necessary is for us to have coherence as a district and to really build the capacity of all of our staff members. And so taking that number of 69, initially the employment was that schools were going to have anywhere from 2 or 3 coaches, depending on the needs of the school. So we based what was going to happen in the allocation
based on the needs of the actual school. In the reduction, we have only 32 coaches as opposed to 69 coaches. And that was the change. In order to ensure that the system still works for ELEAD, we have a system where schools are in networks. And what that means, this is just for professional learning, that they are networks. A network consists of approximately 8 schools. 4 of the schools are in a particular cohort, and then 2 cohorts make up a network. And this is the purpose for professional learning, that the schools will work collaboratively, where they will have opportunities where the teachers will work collaboratively to receive professional learning, as well as the principals will work in small groups to really develop their capacity and work as leaders to focus on our major goals to make sure that they actually meet them. So one of the things you should know is that the coaches actually will service approximately 4 schools, and at time all 8 schools. And I'll just give a quick example. So for example, if we're having professional learning on guided reading, per se, right? So the schools might divide up on a day for staff meetings, and one coach might go to a particular school to provide professional development to that school, and the teachers might come together and they stay at one location to have professional development after school. So the coach is actually servicing 2 schools at that given moment, and there are other times where they're just there for the particular day, servicing just that school, conducting coaching cycles and other things regarding to building the capacity of the teachers. So there are 2 content areas, which is ELA and math, and then we have L coaches for English language learners as well.
Thank you, Ms. Ella.
And then with regard to the paraeducators, I want to clarify that there is no reduction in the allocation that has been made, but you can elaborate, Dr. Vasquez-Santos.
Yes, so there is no reduction. That number of 10 in the additional mitigations to be considered is not that additional number that you see on the final chart. That was just after turnover or retirements and so forth. We did not just fill those units for the new year. The 10 that is being considered can be anywhere from the audits that the Office of Student Supports conduct, which may mean that if they see that there's an IEP that does not require a new para, well then a new unit might not be created to actually fulfill that need. We might be able to transfer a para from a different a school or of that sort. Again, still making sure that we meet the needs of the students, but actually, in a sense, capping it right now and seeing what we can do through an audit process and making sure that all of the IEPs are met, and those that are, because there are IEPs that actually, and Dr. Sellers can speak to this, where we saw that in their IEPs or required services, they did not need a para, but actually got one. So we were able to actually redeploy that person to actually the student who really needed the services and still keep the numbers where they're at.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Oh, right. Ms. Brody.
On that same subject, how would we, I'm trying to wrap my head around, at any given time, a kid there can be a meeting, it says they need a para, so, and that could be forever changing. So I'm trying to wrap my head around the identifying 10.
Right. So,
I just
sure.
can't
So,
process it.
And I'm going to pass the mic to Dr. Sellers. But Dr. Sellers created a matrix, if you may, that actually allows an audit process to kind of look at a student's IEP or a 504 plan to make sure that every aspect of the IEP is in compliance, which is following law. However, we got to a point, and you saw in the budget that's been presented, that a lot of the units and that have been created are those positions that were needed for students with special needs and so forth. So you saw probably an increase in social workers, you saw an increase in paras, you saw an increase in behavioral tech, and those type of supports was because of this new matrix that has been in place of making sure that we are following the law and making sure students are getting the needs. So we've gotten we've gotten to a place where we have a safe number, if you may, and the goal is, okay, how can we actually stay at that level and making sure we continue the ordering process, but that does not eliminate that there might be a risk that we might have to still hire.
Right.
Maybe not 10, but maybe, okay, then the number changed from 10, maybe then 2. So, but I'll allow Dr. Sulz to elaborate a little more.
Right, let me clarify. So was your question about the number 10, of that number 10 just kind of seeming like an erroneous number?
Yeah.
It seems like maybe that's what you were getting at.
It seems, because I'm trying to understand it, because any given time, a kid could be identified
Correct.
that they need a para. So this is just a number, but
Correct.
So are we saying that we're looking at IEPs to see what kids absolutely are required to have a para and moving from there?
Right.
Okay.
Right, and making sure that that the number of paraeducators we have are accurate, making sure that the justification for the need for a paraeducator is actually in the IEP. And, you know, our team has just done a wonderful job of creating this audit process. And also creating a matrix that we'll be using to make sure that we're really looking at the type of needs the students have. We want to make sure that we're not using paraeducators to actually subsidize specially designed instruction that a student would need from a certified teacher. And we have increased some FTE in that regard because we're looking at the fact that maybe paraeducators could be used to subsidize that. So I think the number 10, I mean, I don't want to say it's an erroneous number, but I think it just maybe represents a balanced look at how we could mitigate some of this budget and use our more rigorous audit process to make sure that we do have justifications for paraeducators when a student needs it, that the school have provided, they document it, they provided data and evidence to show that this student needs this level of service. We know that paraeducator support sometimes can make students more passive. It can make them very prompt dependent. So we want to make sure that when we're applying that level of service, we do it very carefully. And that we also make sure that we're really kind of optimizing the use of our paraeducators.
Okay, I know there's some people in the schools that are getting nervous because we all know that a paraeducator does a whole lot more, and they're a tremendous help to the classroom and sometimes to everyone in the classroom. So I know there's a lot of nervousness around the reduction.
You're exactly right, and we're proceeding very cautiously with this. This isn't, something that we're doing with a heavy hand at all, because we do recognize that these are mandated services for a protected class of students. So we are, like I said, proceeding very cautiously, and we do recognize the incidental support that paraeducators, provide to other students in the classroom, and that's very important.
Just to add, Ms. Brody, that $300,000 that, aligns to those 10 paras. I recall perhaps it was a year ago, and I was still acting superintendent, and we had to add about 15 para educators, and that was actually as a result of us not being caught up with service delivery. And so, as I think about, we just received we've been serving 471 new students from Puerto Rico, right? I'm not saying that they all require paras, but nonetheless, they require added levels of support, and so we have to program for that. Just want to clarify that this is not, a box that we're putting ourselves in.
I guess a great way to put it.
Okay, Mr. Hernandez.
Yeah, so I'm going to be quick because I don't really have a question. It's more of a comment or a couple comments. So I think, Superintendent, please correct me if I'm wrong. This is your first year where you had access to the budget that entire year as superintendent or acting superintendent, right? By the time you came in as acting, there was only a couple months away before we had to implement a budget or vote on a budget. Is that correct?
Sure.
So, I am not trying to downplay the situation, right? We know that as a district, we are desperate at a point where we've been flat funded for what will end up being a total of 14 years, right? But if I'm not gonna ask her to change it back to it, but on page 22 for anybody that has it, and if you don't have it, I'll show it to you after, right? I think she showed it earlier. This is the first year where whoever the superintendent is, and whatever board is up here, right, whether it's us or somebody else that's been up here, I don't know how far back we can go, and it doesn't look like much, but the fact that we, or the superintendent, made sure that we impacted central office before we touched our schools says something, right? Because again, look at a couple years ago, right? I mean, 215 in terms of schools, 215 reductions compared to 20 in central office, right? And this year was only 22 in central office and 1.7 in schools. But it's obviously I'm not trying to be that guy that's hey, be positive, but consider it, right? I mean, it's a new era. We do have new leadership up here that is trying to consider the impact that our budget cuts, right? We do take it serious. I know that it said that we don't. We do. And I mean, this is literally step number one. This is the first year where this superintendent had access to the budget for the entire year, right? Where she could actually put her thumbprint on it, her fingerprints on it. And this board has seen change. We had an election this past year in November, right? So we elected 2 new board members up here, and then we've had some change. So what I'm saying is, and I know that this is scary, right? Because these are kids, these are your kids, these are our kids. And I know that I can't be preaching patience when we are literally talking about kids' future, right? But we are in a position where we are focusing on the right thing, where I think we are starting to focus on the right things. It's not going to happen overnight, right? Literally, this board has only been together for less than a year. Seriously, right? If you think about it that way. So I'll shut up and I'll let everybody else get back to it. And obviously I have my concerns with it as well. I'm disappointed to see that we didn't invest in athletics, right? That's something that I'm personally passionate about. And I know that if I were to ask the superintendent to put something in here for athletics, that means we're gonna have to reduce somewhere else, probably teachers or something. I don't know, right? So that's the situation we're in. I'm not getting part of what I wanted. And I don't want to be that person that says that what folks want is not important. I understand, I appreciate it, but I do think that we're starting to focus on the right things as a district. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Mrs. Clark, excuse me.
So I have a few questions. So one is, I'm looking at I guess I'll start with the first part, the reduction of overtime. In what areas is that overtime going to be reflecting? I'll just kind of do a question by question. So overtime, reduction, proposed reduction in overtime as a mitigation, and where it's coming from.
So we saw kind of we did a comparison from last year and years past, and there's an average between $2 to $1.9 million that is actually paid out in overtime. So at looking at that, we said, well, there is an opportunity where actually we can probably put controls on overtime and create kind of a checks and balance procedures to kind of see a decrease in overtime. So instead of granting overtime quickly, we actually make sure that the work is sufficiently done. Can work actually be, can it wait till the next day during the work hours that is scheduled, instead of paying extra for the work to be done in an extended day. So looking at that and creating some parameters and controls around that will probably allow us to capture overtime. But we kind of saw for a system our size, a huge amount of money being actually put or allocated for overtime in the last 2 years.
Okay. I guess I'm wondering where would there be overtime? And I guess that's where kind of my
I can explain. I'll give you a couple examples. In normal staff, if there's a big initiative going on or something where we need to get something done by the end of the week, there's historically been some overtime. There's even been overtime in some of the clerical positions. And, we've just said, there's some logical places, maybe in the custodian area, the security area, where you have events and you need those folks. But outside of that, we should put some tighter policies in place and just not allow it.
As well as seasons. So let's say there's no season, you probably see overtime increases and so forth. But there are certain times that we can actually put controls.
Thank you. And then I know that we heard during the public comment that some schools do not have appropriate supplies and things like that. And again, we're fighting to find money in every area. I guess my concern is with the $1 million reduction in supplies, and I know, Superintendent, you stated this will be in the district and in the central office. Where are we looking as far as a whole, as how are we controlling the reduction of supplies?
Yeah, I can take it from a couple different angles. First, I think, when I just sent out the financials to the schools last week, what I mentioned to them was a little bit of a change, but we're working on our heels here, we're looking pretty fast, which was, outside of the teachers and the professionals we need to pay, anything that's not a salary expense that you've budgeted for, think about that as a pool of money. Because you're right, the pool's not as big as it's been historically, so I'd like to have the principals have some decision-making authority in that process and be able to spend that pool as they wish. Now, historically, they've always budgeted line by line, but I said, let's just give them some authority there and let them spend that. Secondarily, on the supply line in and of itself, this $1 million gets us pretty close to not having much left in the district for supplies. And I'll make this a little bit broader for you. If you go back to this slide over here, and you went back 4 or 5 years and looked at all the items that decisions have been made on, it's been those type of decisions. So 5 years ago, we reduced supplies, and the next year, now you're at a new level. We just keep chipping through it. So if you take another $1 million out, there's not much left in the budget for supplies.
Sorry. And then I'm happy to hear that we potentially might receive some funding for displaced students. I see here. And then the disaster relief funding. Have we decided how that money will be, what that money will be used for, and potentially might be shifting some of the areas where we have funding at and using that money for something else?
Yeah, so that money is specifically for resources and supports for our English learners if they happen to have a special education, service need, and so it has to be allocated specifically for those resources.
Right.
For those specific students as well. And so we don't have flexibility there in terms of allocating it elsewhere, or for example to schools that have not received the displaced students. And so it's for those, the instructional staff, instructional materials, and then any additional English language supports for the students.
Okay. So I guess the question is leading to the places where we've had to kind of come up with the funding for these students. In those areas where we no longer, and I hate to use the word no longer have to, because we potentially might get this federal funding, where would that money now go? That's kind of where.
So the money is going to go to where we had to take it from last year, right? So last year we had to incur, not last year, this year, when we got the students in, we had to incur, extra expense because we knew that we had to service our student, and so we couldn't sit and say, well, we can't service and identify and hire 15 additional, English language tutors like we did, because we had to do it, and so it's going to kind of align and be a wash, if you will, for the expenses that we've already incurred. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Any other questions? Ms. Oliver?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, team, for your hard work on the budget. I've asked a lot of questions prior, and I appreciate the responses. So I have a couple of questions, and And thank you, Mrs. White, for bringing up the overtime. I just want to go back to that subject really quick. We talked about it being seasonal, et cetera, but are we talking about like labor contract, staff, like I'm trying to better understand that. Like who's doing the overtime?
So just like Mr. Flegg stated, that we see them in clerical, we see them in the security and so forth. So we can't do anything that's going to breach the contracts, right? The bargaining contracts. But there are areas actually that allow us to put controls that go beyond has been bargained when it comes to overtime. So those are the areas that we are the look for to put controls into overtime. So this is not an attempt to breach any kind of formal union contract, but what can we do that's beyond the contract that actually we can put controls?
Yeah, thank you. And I by no means saying that you guys.
No, but it's a great question.
Yeah,
no, it's
I
great.
was asking more so because I was trying to better understand. Like I know people
Absolutely.
utilize these facilities. We talk a lot about security in particular and trying to uphold, what exactly the cost of that is. I was wondering if that was one of the areas. I mean, I know you mentioned security, but I didn't know if that was one of the reasons why in trying to get a better handle on that. So I appreciate that. I want to talk about the Achievement First contract. I asked the question previously to staff, and we were able to see the cost of that contract to us, which I think was a little bit larger than maybe some of us thought. I want to better understand how I can reconcile that with what's in the budget book that was presented tonight. So when I go to, I apologize because now I don't have it open. It's A175. It says it's about a little under $2 million. Is that what was shared previous in terms of the maintenance, utilities, custodial, the nurse definitely I see was built in there. So is that what the basically $2 million is? So, and I don't see you guys with the other cheat sheet, right? So the other cheat sheet basically was, maintenance. We thought, and these were estimates. I want to acknowledge. $300,000 utilities, about $410,000 custodial, that kind of stuff. And I'm just wondering, while the numbers don't exactly add up, because you guys were doing estimates in the other response, is that what's baked into this 2 million? Okay. So help me understand.
Sure.
Okay.
So if you look at the FTEs, so the FTEs are actually what's allocated for in that sheet the personnel that's given to them, right? So that's personnel. So there's the additional cost that we gave for Achievement First, which is
it's around $1.2 million savings, and that includes utilities, that include basically the building, the nurse.
Right.
That was $80,000 salary.
Yeah, you said savings
for us.
For us.
Okay.
Yes, for us.
As if we were
moving forward with our
proposal.
Is that confirmed?
So we still, Corporation Counsel was still checking a couple of things, and she has not come back to us yet.
Okay.
However, we are ready to meet with Achievement First Management as soon as we get the clearance from Corporation Counsel.
Okay, thank you. You have a question?
Well, on that, so
Yeah.
can you clarify, I'm trying to understand. So if those savings that you're discussing or in the sheet that Kim is referencing, are those then, they're more like, they're not necessarily in just Achievement First, they're like across the district. Are they reflected in here or not? They're not in this budget that I'm looking at.
No.
No, they're not.
They're not on this page budget.
But they are, all right, so they're reflected in the whole
Yes.
budget. Okay.
Excuse me.
They are reflected.
Correct.
Excuse me, Kim, I don't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to, for the record, what are we talking about when we talk in terms of agreement? Are we talking about the contract and sort of revisiting the contract, or are we simply talking about, because other people behind us don't understand what we're talking about?
It's revisiting the contract.
Okay.
And in terms of the contract.
All right, Kim, I'm sorry.
Okay, no, thank you. I also, I would like to, I appreciate pulling out the budget alignment on page 12 of the slideshow with our priorities. So and I realize this is not perfect world, utopia. So one of the things we pulled out is like teaching and learning. Mentioned earlier, we see actually a plus of like the 1.4, and when I go to central office, there's a negative 8.9 in the Office of Academics, right? So I guess I appreciate slide 12, but at least for me, it's difficult to follow how the priorities really informed the budget. And I know there's something still to be fleshed out, so I acknowledge that. But I just wanted to make a statement because I'm not able to do it. And the other question I have, at least at this moment, is, and maybe it's not tonight, but I feel the need to better understand the SGC process. I feel as if this is the second year for me going through this, and the feedback that we've gotten, not by everyone, but we've definitely had some who have shared, hey, we didn't agree with this budget, or information wasn't shared. We had that kind of comment tonight. So I just am trying to better understand what the process actually is with the SGC. Just to, let you guys know, when people have approached me about what's happening at the school, I inquire if the parent is aware of the SGC, are they talking to the SGC members, that kind of thing. So I just want to better understand.
So the point of actually aligning a lot of the budget process or decision making to the priorities of DME. Today you kind of probably will see a little bit about kind of what are the decisions in kind of the realignment. So as difficult this process has been, this budget process, a lot of tough conversations have happened, a lot of tough decisions have had to be made, and one of them was actually looking at a new way of work when it comes from central office and deploying services or the system supports to schools.
Okay.
So yes, you'll probably see some decreases in some divisions, but you're also going to probably see new divisions that have been created to support the DME, and kind of the commitment that the board and the superintendent has put forth. And one of them is actually the Office of Special Education. So you saw probably some of those positions that were probably traditionally under the Office of Academics are probably now have been redefined, new job descriptions, and probably even looking for new folks to actually do the job that is aligned to the DME and the work that the board and the superintendent has actually highlighted. So for example, compliance positions and making sure that we all have we have met compliance in meeting students' needs. The behavior text, and really looking at that job descriptions and recreating it. And now we have two individuals or two positions now that are going to focus in helping and supporting schools when and behavior text at school sites when it becomes to work of culture and climate. So a lot of that work is actually being realigned, and hopefully you can see this evidence kind of being fleshed out as we're having these continual conversations on the DME. The fact that Ms. Avila has spoken about the e-lead of really now centralizing coaches falls into actually saying, deploying supports for teachers to maximize teaching and learning and what happens in the classroom. So those are kind of evidence that of the DME. Others are going to take a little longer, but it's good to always ask that question to keep us focused on our work as we're making decisions and having conversations when we talk about our own divisional budgets and making decisions.
One thing that I'll pass around is the actual work that's happening as of today. And so this is, you know, you certainly know the graphic, which is our district model of excellence, but it is our strategic implementation plan. We know that we have our, we need one more. We know that we have our district priorities, we know that we have our 6 major goals, and so the work that we actually did today, we spent the day with all of our principals, assistant principals, and deans around operationalizing the district model of excellence, Ms. Oliver. And so while this is still a work in progress, because we have 2 more days with our administrators, we have 2 extensive engagement sessions next week, one with all of our stakeholders and with parents. You know, it just gives you a glimpse as to how it's becoming, you know, operationalized, and what the indicators are in alignment to that. You know, ultimately we want to get to a place in which we're able to assign, which I think is what you're asking, able to assign, you know, people and departments to each of this work. We also have here in this document who the priority lead is for each of our priorities as well. So just an artifact that it's work in progress, if you will, of making the DME not only operationalized but measurable.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, Mrs. Glanville.
Thank you. It's probably more like comments. So so as I'm looking at these goals and priorities, similar to the question that Ms. Oliver just raised about really wanting to see the district priorities and goals reflected in the budget. You know, and I guess like overarchingly, you know, that slide on page 10 where you can see the decrease in our enrollment from 2013 to the present. I know it's not in here, but we have a slide where we had seen some data for that similar time frame, like that shows, you know, as we've had this decrease in enrollment, we've actually had an increase in the total number of high needs students, EL students, and special ed students, like a significant increase. And so, you know, that to me, like that, this is a broader, you know, I'm looking at this from like a state and, you know, national perspective. Like that to me is kind of like the definition of concentrating need. As you have, you know, a declining enrollment, but then the enrollment that you have is increasing in high needs. And so, you know, that, you know, in addition to the flat funding, that this is our context. And so, you know, I don't see equity in that. I mean, and I'm not saying that that's us, but I don't see equity in what we're doing when we're dealing with sort of the climate that we're in fiscally, and this is the situation that we're in. And we know even within that those highest need students are concentrated within the district in a subset of our schools, right? Which still per student, I believe, are actually on average funded less than our magnet schools. So, you know, these are just some of the sort of broader themes that I just wanted to express, I guess, my frustration. You know, not obviously at you all who have worked very hard to put this together, but like, you know, this is a really, and then we're looking, you know, at these mitigation strategies, talking about cutting paras, and I hear everything, you know, that you said as far as like how that would happen, but again, I mean, our highest need schools are going to be the ones that are disproportionately affected even by that mitigation strategy. And then I'm looking at the major goal priority here that we all know, we've talked about as part of the district model for excellence, which is progressively work towards creating community schools at all school sites by 2022. And, you know, talking about cutting overtime is something that I know, I mean, again, this is, you know, kind of granular, but like part of having a community school is being able to have extended hours and have that cost security and janitorial overtime. So, you know, that seems like that's going against our priorities as well. You know, and again, obviously the priority around our decreasing chronic absenteeism and increasing student perceptions of safety. I mean, these are all things, again, with the level of need that we have in the flat funding. It's hard for me to, you know, see that reflected in our budget. And you know, in our sort of statewide and national context. So, you know, I just had that comment, and then in general, you know, I would like to see things, things that we do, for example, in our magnet schools I would like to see us moving to be able to do some of those things in our neighborhood schools, and we're actually moving in the opposite direction, even with this. Like, I would like for us to be able to have tuition-free preschool in our neighborhood schools. I'd like for us to be able to have transportation from any zone to our neighborhood schools. I'd like for us to be able to have foreign language in our elementary grades in our neighborhood schools, and we don't even have that in our neighborhood middle schools. So, you know, and obviously because we can't afford it, right? So, but then I think that starts to raise the question around, you know, well, you know, and I know the transportation question, it comes up in the context of achievement first as well. You know, that is not necessarily reflected, but I think one of the things that is in that MOU that is actually, I think, was supposed to be of benefit to us when it was negotiated, or it's written that way, is that we can actually, which is not, I think, the state law. Like, I think we have to provide transportation, but that MOU actually has a narrower provision in it that says that we can actually, for achievement first, set where we provide transportation. And as far as I know, we haven't done that. So are we looking at things like that to, you know, again, that are like, I think, more equitable things to be looking at to, like, you know, decrease the transportation budget if that means that you're going to be able to provide more programming, more quality programming. Like, these are some of the sort of overarching strategic priority questions that I still have about this budget as we see these mitigation strategies this evening. So thank you for all of your hard work on it. But I don't know if there was a question in there. I'd be happy to speak to it.
So I just need to kind of address it, because I heard the overtime question again. So there will be a priority of looking at this. So when you mentioned, like, saying after school programs that would need additional security, in no way, I think from my lens of looking at it, would I approve someone saying I'm not going to allow overtime for that, because that's compromising a program, an educational program. What I can say is saying to someone, let's say, who is probably working on a project on staff, and normal hours are, you know, 9 to 5, but wants to do 2 hours extra because they want to finish a PowerPoint that really can get done tomorrow, then I'm going to say, no, I'm not, it can wait till tomorrow. You know, I'm not compromising an educational program for that. So that's kind of a way of looking at it, of how we can kind of control overtime and those type of things, which happens, believe it or not, quite often in our district. So those are the things that we have to kind of put control over. But anything that and I can speak for Dr. Torres Rodriguez, anything that compromises our educational program, we've been pretty strict on that, on making sure that we stay focused, and even the team as well has really embraced that approach of making sure that schools get what they need, and we try to do our best. I have to say, what we're proposing here is because we have turned every stone, we have looked at every contract, we have dissected anything that has come across that desk that we could dissect, to actually find a way of cost savings or cost avoidance, to actually propose a balanced budget to get somewhere without compromising anything that happens at the school level. And this is where we're at. So, and this is our best thinking. And we continue to still start looking. It doesn't end today. Tomorrow we'll be having conversations again of how we can, you know, look for different ways. I mean, today I was speaking to a funder about possibly donating services to look at our whole data management system, and actually doing that free for the district, which is, those who work in that industry know that's a big ticket item. And for someone to do that, I mean, that's great. So these are the things that we're trying to do, being creative, of trying to find ways to support the efforts of the board, the district model of excellence, the superintendent, without actually adding additional costs to the budget.
Can I say something? It's not a question, it's just like a comment. But I know that the budget's very complicated and it's hard and like you are making difficult decisions. But reducing the supplies in schools is constantly happening yearly. And it's not helping any of the students. It's not improving schools and it's not making them effective. And this year, a lot of students have come here and told the board that they are lacking resources in their school. And it's not fair to them to come to a school where they don't have toilet paper, where they don't have hand soap, where they don't have paper, and you have to go to a printer to print a project that is due maybe in like 5 minutes, and there's no paper. And the blame's put on them. The teachers put the blame on them because they don't have the paper, they don't have their projects in hand. And teachers try to understand, but teachers also want to give students that independence. But how are students supposed to have that independence if there's no paper in their printer to print out their project? That they did, and they did it on time, they just don't have it on paper. And it's not fair to teachers who have to take money out of their salaries to buy paper for their students. I know my English teacher, she used her own money, she has her own printer, her own paper, and she allows us to print our essays because we don't have paper in our school. It's very limited. And students usually have to go room to room asking teachers for paper, and some teachers don't want to give it because it's their own money, and they need to use it for their classroom to print out their packets of work. And it discourages students when they have projects. A lot of students don't have the materials at home to create these beautiful poster boards or to fill the requirements needed for their project, so they go to their art teachers. And sometimes the art teachers can't give them the supplies that they need because they need that supplies for their art classes. So students don't do the project because they don't have the material. So that's how they get a bad grade. And it's not the student's fault, it's just that they don't have the necessary resources to do it. And so like the students here today, they said, you know, I don't like the education that I'm receiving. And reduction in supplies, that's why they don't like their education, is because they don't have the materials they need to succeed.
Okay, so I guess that's a good segue for me. I'm not going to take up a lot of time, so I'll keep my comments limited, and I guess a lot of you would appreciate that. But I'll simply say this. With that said, and I guess I'll start with supplies because that's what's on the floor. Again, that is something that we have to correct, we have to reverse, and it will take some time to do that because supplies and those things weren't necessarily a priority in other budget cycles. I'm not here to criticize any other superintendent, chair, or finance director for those decisions because they did what they decided was best at the particular time. And again, like I said before, the city is severely handicapped. Though they received a substantial bailout, they are still hopping along as well. So there's very few people that are entities that we can turn to for funding and to rescue us. So we are in a situation where we have to deal with what we have, and we have to make lemonade out of the sour lemons that we were given. And so I appreciate the hard work that you've all done. I really do. The hard work you've done in the finance department, the hard work you've done in our meetings, to just articulate and get this information in front of us and try to explain it. It's been a very long and lengthy process, and that process, for many of you who don't know, that lasted up until about 4:30 today. So many of us were still getting updates and still getting information on the budget, still being educated on it. And so I hear you, we heard the SGC members. I think that we definitely should have a workshop, SGCs, because we have a lot of different things that we need to discuss when it comes to SGCs, not simply just the budget process, but principal hiring, and then how we're going to streamline that process, improve it so that we can be more efficient. So I think we should definitely look into that. I am somewhat concerned Because if an FGC member says that he or she was not involved in the process, that's more reflective of a principal and not necessarily central office or the board. And so that suggests to me that the principal has not had an open process. And so we definitely should look into that, not particularly that school, but just overall district-wide, look into how that process works and empower parents. And then I'll say, the last thing I'll say is the one resource that we did not tap, the largest resource that we did not tap was parents. And what we need to do now is be realistic. Where we don't have money and where we don't have the personnel, we need to try to figure out how to leverage volunteers from the community and enlist parents to help us. Because we can't do this alone. And what we do on a daily basis is we receive the hopes and dreams of the parents every day. And we have them for 6 to 8 hours. And we need to figure out a better job on how to create a solid partnership with parents so that we can help their children and we can help our community, because those 21,000 children, they're our children. And they're our future, and they're the only future we have. So with that said, I am going to, Madam Superintendent.
Just want to try to respond to as many people through one response. I heard Ms. Glanville, you talk about extended day, extended year, and the fact that those are added costs that typically could be attached to the school district. I heard leveraging our parents. I do believe that there's an opportunity that we as a district perhaps, have not really been either diligent or have not had the opportunity to really embrace, and that is around leveraging our partners in a more coherent way. It's certainly, we've started to have conversations. We're looking to see how it is that we can be more efficient. I know that there are community-based organizations that, are funded for services that we at the school district as well provide for our students. And so there's a lot of duplication of services, and I hear that in many different meetings that I attend. And so I don't know that it's necessarily the school district that has to kind of take the step and say, okay, so, can we leverage a cross-collaborative, table so that we can collectively leverage. There are funders that, I have conversations with our funders. They're apprehensive. Sometimes they're apprehensive about the fact that they don't feel that there's a collaborative, citywide strategy that we have around, education or youth. And so I'm just wondering if, we're missing out on that opportunity, while we know, right, the last 5 years, there's been, a significant decline the trend will continue, right? We know that for the next 4 years, there is flat funding, right? That is a given that we already know. And so, it's kind of, back on us as a district to really think about how can we innovate and use this opportunity. And so, just maybe not a response directly, but that it's, it's in the back of my mind, knowing that, I'll make the connection to the SBAC scores, right? Preliminary, very positive. And, I struggle because one of the greatest gains that we're seeing is in our 8th graders, 8th grade math. And so they're getting ready to go to high school. And I wish I could tell you that I had a specific strategy for our 9th graders. I wish I could call one out right now, right? So they're going to go to high school, and they're going to experience what they've been experiencing in terms of the resources, in terms of the structures, but it is not intense delivery of services. And so lots of opportunities, yet significant challenges that I know, Ms. Glenville, right? I know we have a responsibility to address, but I want to also validate that, at the state and even national level as well. So, felt that I had to say that.
Okay, no, I'm joking. Okay, no, that's fair. And again, This is a ongoing process. The board has responsibilities also, so this is not simply just a district thing, and we can help by organizing and engaging community and parents. So this is an all hands on deck effort. And the one thing I do want to say though, is it's kind of refreshing to disagree and not be disagreeable. So when some of the people came to talk about their dislike or displeasure with the budget, it was civilized, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot, because that affords and allows us to have a conversation and engage, and no member here sitting here is afraid of having a conversation about the budget or anything else. But we just simply don't want to have a uncivilized back and forth, because that doesn't help anyone. So again, with that said, is there any motion? Is there a motion? Let's see. Let me read it first, because I must have lost my pace. All right. The Hartford Board of Education, are we going to, no, you know what, I take that back. Is there a motion to table the budget tonight? Is there a motion? No motion?
So moved, yeah.
So moved, is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. I was going to. Sorry about that. Forgive me, I started to do it, then I did the motion, so I did it backwards, forgive me. Because I saw adoption and I crossed it out. The Hartford Board of Education adopts the fiscal year 2017-2018 budget in the amount of $415,799,210, effective July 1st, 2018. And there was a motion to table. Is there a second to that motion?
So moved to table.
And it's been seconded?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of tabling the budget? Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
All right. The ayes have it, and for the record, Mr. Hernandez said no. And we are going to table the budget until, well, we'll have a special meeting for the budget, and we'll have that pretty soon. So I'll look forward to that. So I want to thank everyone on that, and Mr. Hernandez, definitely want to thank you for expressing your opinion. I want to thank everyone else for their questions and their patience with this, and saying we're going to move on to item number 2, administrative appointment. The Board of Education approves the superintendent's recommendation to appoint the following individuals to positions indicated. Madam Superintendent.
Let me find my notes.
So first is Dr. Jim Sellers, currently Executive Director of servicing our student supports, and the appointment to Assistant Superintendent for Student Support Services effective July 1st. You know, we've had conversations around the action plan and the implementation of the action plan in response to the OCA, and one of the referencing points that continued to be lifted for us was our structures and whether we as a district were lifting special education programming and oversight to the level in which it was required to. And so, you know, historically, student supports has lived with academic programming, and so given the needs that we have in our district and the improvement efforts that we have to continue to do, we felt that it was the most prudent thing to do to elevate that position to sit, you know, as part of the cabinet. And while this is not a chief level position, it's not at that level, we felt that the assistant superintendent would, you know, separate, if you will, from the Office of Academics and serve as one department. And Dr. Sellers, since, you know, her arrival here, has clearly demonstrated her not only skill set, knowledge base, but the disposition to really serve our students in a way that it's, you know, inclusive, but also that takes into the need of the instructional capacity that needs to be built for our staff. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Matos for additional comment on that.
Thank you, Dr. Torres Rodriguez. I echo our superintendent's comments about Dr. Sellers. We saw the need of really lifting this office and the work of this office as many of you have expressed tonight, the increase in demand to actually provide services for our students with disabilities has increased. It is a very, very busy department, constantly phone calls, emails, conversations, visits, and so forth. At 6:30 in the morning, I can come into the office, and there are quite a few of us early in the morning, but Dr. Sellers is always there on that computer and typing away, addressing the needs that come across her desk. If I was to kind of summarize Dr. Sellers' ability and his personality, I would say Dr. Sellers is truly a champion, not an advocate, but a champion for students. She, in one of our one-on-ones, there's something that stood in my mind when we had a conversation, and she said to me, you know, Dr. Vasquez, I mean it when I mean all is all for students. And that stood with me, and she really believes that, and in her day-to-day work, she demonstrates it, and she expects it of her staff. She's well known for the best practices. I didn't know this when I came on board, but she was actually right down the road from me in Central Florida, as doing the same work, and well known and a great reputation. She's up to date with her current research, always presenting the best research that's out there that benefit our district, and shares it with her colleagues and her teams in the schools. And truly, truly an example of what we call servant leadership. She leads by example and always, always putting everyone else before herself and making sure the students are served. So I'm glad to be here supporting her as a colleague and joining our superintendent and recommending her for the assistant superintendent for student support services and special education.
Is there any questions? Any questions?
I just have a comment.
There's a comment, Ms. Oliver.
I would just like to say it has been a pleasure to get to know you, Dr. Sellers, and work with you, especially on the Teaching and Learning Committee. Your passion and commitment for our young people, especially those who learn differently, is contagious and is very apparent. Many of us who may be in this audience, on this board, have personal situations where we're working with students with special needs, or have students or just children in our own lives. And it has been just a great opportunity for learning. I just am very hopeful. I know we have a lot of work to do, but I do believe that we can get there. So I'm very much looking forward to working with you, and plan to vote my approval for this appointment. Thank you.
Any other comments? Mr. Flor.
I want to say that I have interacted with Dr. Sellers, not just as a board member and member of the Teaching and Learning Committee, but as a parent. And we've had many discussions over my own child, who I feel is not receiving the services that he needs. And it's sometimes I've felt frustrated and pained when we sit at the Teaching and Learning Committee and I hear all the great plans that she has. And I say, no, they're coming perhaps too late for my child. So I wish we had her 5 years ago, because I truly believe that for you, this is not a job, but it's a calling. So I'm very grateful that we have you here.
Mr. Hernandez, I know you are.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add, right, so it should also tell you something that that it's the members of the Teaching and Learning Committee that are speaking up, right? Because, you know, we obviously have formed a very good partnership with Dr. Sellers, and you know, sometimes even for us as board members, there's always a learning curve, right? And you've made that very easy for us as you're introducing us to concepts that we've had in the back of our minds before, but you're giving us the details that we wouldn't even have to experience, that some of us haven't had to experience in the past. So thank you for that. And just to say that some of our most productive conversations in that committee have been led by Dr. Sellers. So thank you. I will obviously be voting in favor of this appointment, and I'm just glad that the superintendent is giving you more to do, because that just means we're going to get, it's going to, literally just by that, I know the district is going to be a better place. So, yeah.
I just had a comment.
Ms. Glanville.
No, just I'm jealous about the Teaching and Learning Committee. I want to be on it now.
I'm jealous too, anyway. Any other comments? Any questions? I'll just say, I have a child who had an IEP, and I was beyond upset about services. I don't think the IEP was met. I don't think that he got the services he should have had, and my complaints are well documented, unfortunately. But I'll say that what's important for me is that we get to the school level, and not only are we trying to infect our teachers and energize them, but we need to also, again, and I know the superintendent said that they were working on that. That may not be the main priority of the district, but we have to build capacity in the community to support our babies when they're home, so our friends and our families can understand our special needs students, and how to support them, and how to encourage them, and how to encourage the love of learning at home. So we need to figure out how to build that network. I know that's a lot, it's a heavy lift, as Dr. Montos and the superintendent have acknowledged, but I've only actually been in one meeting with you. I'm really jealous too now that I think about it. But that was a good meeting, and I was really impressed. I know, I'm realizing right now, yeah, that's not good.
We're full.
So, yeah, I think we should figure out how we can introduce you and sort of get you in front of parents, because I think that would help. I think it would be encouraging. I think it would be empowering. And I think we have a lot of parents that are frustrated and that are at their wit's end. And all they want to do is have an education for their babies. That's all they want. And so if we can help ease that emotion and sort of form a better partnership so we can support what you guys are doing, I think we would be remiss if we didn't do that. And I know that everyone sitting here would be happy to help in any way we can help. So I know you guys have to define that, so you define that. But thank you for all that. And with that said, I'm going to open up for a vote. All in favor of appointing Dr. Sellers as assistant superintendent, vote aye. Say, I did the motion already.
Oh, you did?
I did.
Okay.
I did. I did the motion. I'll do it again, but when I read the effective June 1st, I did the motion then. So, sorry, I'll do it again. Dr. Sellers, the position indicated Dr. Sellers was positioned to assistant superintendent for student support effective July 1. Is there a motion?
So moved.
The move, is there a second?
Second.
The moved and seconded. I threw it to Dr. Torres. Sorry about that. Now we need to vote. So it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Welcome. Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Please.
I'd like to just take a moment to say thank you to the superintendent, to the deputy superintendent for recommending me for the position, and thank you to the board for your vote of confidence. I think this is just a really important step in showing the families, the community, our children, how the board and how the Hartford Board of Ed really values this work as integral to the mission and vision of the district. So I just want to say thank you very much. When I first came on board, I met with several vocal parents and advocates and listened to their stories. So I do know the work that we have to do here, and I will tell you what I told them, please just don't listen to my words. I can talk real pretty. Watch my actions. Watch what we do in our department and hold us accountable. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Subsection B, Michael Maziar to the position of principal at Pathways Academy effective August 1st, 2018. Is there a motion? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Has the motion been seconded? Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Madam Superintendent.
Yes. Principal Maziar's currently executive principal at Hartford Public High School Academy of Engineering and Green Technology to the position of principal at Pathways Academy for Technology and Design. Principal Maziar's has had a history of leading in our district and is ready for a new journey at Pathways. I know that Ms. Avila has additional background and context, but clearly we know of Mr. Maziar's because of his commitment to making sure that our students feel engaged in school and have additional opportunities to learn beyond the school walls with regard to their internships or project-based learning. And so thank you for your leadership thus far, Principal Maziar's, and I'll turn it over to Yvette.
Mr. Maziar has been here for 14 years and has really shown the dedication to the Hartford Public School District. He first began as a teacher, then a dean of students, and then as the principal of the Academy of Engineering and Green Technology. Presently, for the past 3 years, he's been the executive principal of all of the 3 academies in Hartford Public and Hartford High. He really strives to build real-world experiences and really preparing children for college and career. He has also shared the positive narrative for Hartford and many different places of presentations, and has developed partnerships with Pratt & Whitney, CBIA, and many other places, and continues to advocate not only for his students as individuals, but also for resources. And so presently, right now, he is working on 2 different grants at the state level to really support the children, to increase the financial capacity in his building to provide additional resources for them. He's participated in the RISE Network, and at this present moment, he will be going to Pathways if it is passed, to really focus in one area of technology, to really push Pathways to a new level. And he's a person who has not only just dedicated his life, but is continuing to choose to stay in Hartford. Many of our people have other opportunities to go places, and he has wanted to continue to be here, to continue his legacy in Hartford Public Schools.
Is there any questions?
I have a comment.
Ms.
I do have a question. I just want to acknowledge that I saw you on June 9th getting a boatload of books at the giveaway for the school. I greatly appreciate that. We may still have some books left over, so we may talk about how we can get some of those out, especially in our upper ages. I think that says a lot when you could have been doing things with your family then, and you were actually getting books for your schools. So that, and of course I know the great work that you've been doing at HBHS, even though it's Hartford High and not the other, but that's all right. I look forward to continued work, and I appreciate your great dedication to our students. So I look forward to seeing more of you. Thank you.
And Ms. Clark.
So I just have a comment as well. I just want to say thank you for your service, and I want to say that like your enthusiasm and your passion for the kids is like toxic. Not toxic. It's not toxic. It's like it's not toxic. It's getting late. It's not toxic. It's really infectious. It's one of those things where sitting on the stage with you and just seeing the emotion that you have for your kids. And really challenging them and encouraging them to be better. I just know that in your future, going over to this new school, that you will pour out your passion the same way you did at Hartford Pub. I did not know your kids there, meaning the students, and just the emotion that they had there shows that you really, really cared. And so I just want to commend you, and I hope that you bring that over to the new school as well.
Any other questions or comments? All right. So I'm sorry I got to do it to you. So I'm just going to ask you a few questions, and that's kind of based on what we heard here tonight. So one of the questions or concerns that Hyacinth Yeti brought up was absenteeism, chronic absenteeism, and an attendance worker. And so I know that the school had some high numbers in that department. So what I'm interested to know what you feel the problem was in terms of support or lack of support, what you did to combat the absenteeism, and what out of the box protocols or procedures that you would put in place in order to curb absenteeism.
Yeah, so it's a good question, a reasonable one, right? Chronic absenteeism is something that affects, I think, a lot of the schools, and especially at Hartford Public High School. So one of the challenges that we realized, especially this year, was having 3 schools under 1 leader, and the variability in how each school functioned in terms of responding to attendance. In terms of the staff that you have in place, what are the roles of your FRAs, what are the roles of your social workers, how does each attendance team function? And I think one of the really positive things that we were able to do throughout the course of the year, especially toward the end of the year, was work with our partners at the RISE Network and really move from an attendance team to a building-wide attendance committee. And this went through a series of workshops and trainings that we did as a group, and really did an analysis of the attendance policy that existed and took a self-assessment of where were we lacking. What was our classroom teachers doing or not doing that we could do better? What was lacking from each attendance team? Where was there a lack of protocols or universal things that we could do? And how do we better involve our parents and engage our students? And that committee is now in place as a solid committee with representatives from each department within the school, has done a complete overhaul and a look at how we share and disseminate that information to the staff. We really modeled it after almost a NIASC accreditation committee to really make sure that we were getting ahead of it. We also built in timelines, not just within the scope of what we were dealing with presently, but the timelines for next year, so that we did not have cases where we were acting reactively to students who were not attending school, but rather proactively. And this will be engaged not only through our summer bridge work and the work that our 9th grade team will do with the incoming 8th graders, but also from the get-go of the first day of school, and really taking the time as an organized and operational effective system that is also one that's human and reaches out to families. And we don't wait till a student has missed 5, 6, 7, 8 days of school, but that we are making sure they're there for period 1 and period 2. And if for any reason they are not, being able to respond. And that's something that really took time for us to unravel and get a hold of. And I think the development of that committee and the strategic people from each department that are on there who bring different resources is going to be a really strong shift in being able to be proactive rather than reactive in the coming year. And to the second piece, I think we've really tried to look at our partnerships and what programs and potential grants we were going to offer moving forward. So as Ms. Aviles brought up, we are looking next year at some opportunities at the state level for grants, and one of our major focus is going to be on attendance case managers. Something that we've been lacking this year. We know that as a district we have funding sources that are not going to be able to necessarily respond to everything that we want to do or can do, but that is something we are attacking very systematically. And we hope and are very positive about that outlook moving forward, where we'll have human beings and bodies where that is their full-time job. Rather than trying to pull social workers and other people out, they will help to support those people where their full-time jobs to make sure our kids are at school, and if not, how can we work with the families to get them there?
Okay, I'm going to flip the coin for a minute, and I'll package it in a new question and make it my last. So that's a systematic and intentional way of setting protocols that monitor chronic absenteeism, but how are you making it interesting for children so that they don't want to miss school, and that they are interested in school and they're investing in their education? And with that, if you are going to be the instructional leader of Pathways School of Technology, there is a serious technology gap in the city of Hartford when our northwest neighborhood doesn't have the proper amount of cell towers. And so internet access in some of our neighborhoods are extremely limited. And then internet providers are almost monopolized in certain parts of the area. So how do you plan on increasing or changing the culture or supporting the culture of Pathways? And then at the same time, creating or building capacity so that children are invested in their learning, and how do you plan to overcome the technology shortage that we have and that exists in the community?
So to the first point, I think that the most important thing to bring and enhance that I can bring to the table at Pathways is a sense of family. It is something that I know that they have had and have worked on, but that doesn't just come from words, that comes from action. Relationships to me have always been the foundation, the most important part of any aspect of being a leader. We can have an excellent curriculum and an excellent plan, but if we don't have a connection from our kids and from the entire community, we're not going to get very far. And so my goal would be to really build a family in which all students, whether they're Hartford students or students from suburban towns, have one home base, which is Pathways. And the idea that even though we're coming from all these towns and we go and separate, this is the place where we come together. And I think that you have to make sure that students have a voice, parents have a voice, they feel welcome, and that everyone has access. Not just certain groups, but everyone has access to learning. And everyone has access to a climate and an environment where people feel welcome and feel like it's a family. And that's something that I've always prided myself on at Hartford Public High School, is making sure that our kids were not just liked, that they were loved, and they knew that they were loved. And to try to build that in our staff and to do the same at Pathways. I think the biggest step is really, when you're looking at having students feel welcome in that relationship piece, it can't just be through words, there also has to be an approach that is a vision and mission from the leader and from the school. And that can be done through not only professional learning and focus on social emotional learning, but you also have an avenue of advisory. You also have your PTO and your SGC. There are several systematic approaches, but also it has to be a human approach in which everyone is engaged and everyone's involved. And that's something that I've always tried to pride myself on, is a sense of family. And I want to bring that to Pathways to make sure that everyone feels that sense and that they feel engaged, and that all students at the school have an opportunity to succeed and take part in the many excellent programs that exist there.
Okay, as promised, I said I would only ask 2 questions. So I'll just leave it at that and say that I'm very familiar with the RISE program and do have some concerns about that, but I won't bring that up here. So with that said, I have no more questions. The motion has been made and it's been seconded. So all in favor of appointing Mr. Michael Mazio, the position of principal at Pathways Academy, effective August 1st. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes carry. Congratulations. Item number 3, approval of contract amendment, CBS Therapy, $250,000. Hartford Public Schools has had 16 unexpected departures by speech and language pathologists within the district over the 2016-2017 and the 2017-2018 school years. The district has had difficulty in replacing these 16 professionals independently and has had to utilize the services of outside agencies to meet these staffing needs in order to meet the mandated support of Hartford Public Schools students and to ensure compliance with the state and federal educational guidelines. As a result, the CBS Therapy original contract for 8 speech language professionals requires an increase to 14 language pathologists. Madam Superintendent.
We've had multiple conversations around CBS Therapy, and this is. I'll ask Dr. Sellers to join us, but this is an ongoing need that we have. This is an issue not only at the state but nationally around the shortage area in terms of certified speech therapists, and so this is a mandate that we have to fulfill for our students who have individualized education plans and require speech and language service provision. So.
Any questions?
Any questions? Any questions, any comments? Hearing none. If you just want to quickly for the record, like really quickly, for
Okay,
the record.
yeah, I mean, you said it very well. We had several resignations. We did have also influx of students due to Hurricane Maria. So we had some students coming in who needed, maybe weren't identified for services, but were suspected to possibly be a student with disability, needed speech and language evaluation. So we had our need for increased evaluations, and we did have new students who were identified for services who did need those services. So these are mandated services, and we had to, do what was needed to make sure that we had the personnel in the schools to provide those services.
And so I have one question, which is can you speak to the shortage of these professionals? Is this a shortage in the greater Hartford area? Is this a shortage in the state? Why are we contracting?
Right, so I'm glad you brought that up. So there's a nationwide shortage of speech and language pathologists. It is a master's level position. It requires individuals who have graduated to do a clinical year. So there's mentorship that's needed, and we currently, as I said, have a shortage of speech and language pathologists. Bringing new SLPs on board does require that mentorship piece, that clinical year. So it is a nationwide shortage area. So we're we're not the only district who's relying on outside service providers to provide us with those speech and language pathologists.
And last question, is there some kind of plan that we can or strategy that we need to impose later on, just to either contract this altogether or build our own talent pool or pipeline? I don't even know how that works.
Right. Well, we're certainly looking at options. There are some very small districts who may have a few speech and language pathologists and provide the majority of their services through an outside service provider. High-performing districts, world-class educational systems, I think recognize the importance of a speech and language pathologist in the overall problem-solving framework on a school campus. SLPs have tremendous expertise when it comes to language, when it comes to reading, when it comes to understanding how students learn to decode symbols and sounds and turn that into receptive and expressive, language. Those individuals are really important. I think I mentioned this before. Our speech and language pathologists are probably some of the most overworked and underutilized staff in our district. We're using them very thinly to provide these direct services, but making sure that we're recruiting speech and language pathologists, making sure we're providing FTE that gives them time for direct services, but also time to work themselves into the integrated model of student support on the entire campus would be a really powerful strategy as well, and we would certainly see gains in achievement if we did that.
Excellent. Okay, so hearing the questions, no debate. The Hartford Board of Education authorizes the superintendent to amend the contract with CVS Therapy for an additional $250,000 for the term delineated in the contract ending June 30th, 2018. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of supporting this motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries. Okay.
Mr. Chair, can I point of personal privilege?
Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you so much. All right, so it's been a long night, folks, right? And we are tired. But in that being tired, we forgot to give our new principal for Pathways a chance to say something. So we're going to give him a little bit of time just to say something, whatever he would like to say. And again, this is a pretty big moment for him in his career, so just wanted to give him a couple minutes.
Thank you. I'll try not to take up too much time. I just would be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to thank the staff and families, the community and especially the students at Hartford Public High School. I said I was there for 14 years, the last 6 as principal, and everything that I know and have learned has been there. And I've loved those students in that school, and they will definitely be missed. In part of being a leader too is also being reflective and looking at what's working and where we are going forward. And this transition was also a time for not only for me to be reflective and step down, but let the next person lead the transition, which coincided with an opportunity that I want to thank the superintendent in central office and especially this board to allow me to engage in at Pathways Academy of Technology and Design, a model that I'm very passionate about, that I believed in. I believed in work-based learning opportunities, in giving kids real-world experiences that they can apply their learning through internships, through project-based learning, and I spend my time building these partnerships up with the business community and bringing them into our schools and getting our kids out of the school and there. I believe in that model. I'm passionate about it. I have a great amount of energy and excitement about this that I've always had, and I am just very grateful, thankful for my time and honoring them, but so thankful and excited to be able to grow as a leader and change is growth, and I am just honored and humbled, and I appreciate the board, our superintendent, the SGC, the staff, the students, and the family at Pathways for allowing me to be a part of their family and grow that family. Thank you so much.
Approval of contract continuation. The Causeway Agency, $130,000. Over the past 3 years, the Office of School Choice has partnered with the Causeway Agency to lead a successful marketing and branding campaign to inform and engage Hartford families on those of the greater Hartford region to understand school selection process and the various Hartford school options available through the district choice and regional school choice lotteries. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, I'll ask Dr. Colon-Rivas to join us for any questions. We've had some conversation about this agency and the fact that we're looking, moving forward to explore other opportunities, if you will. However, in the meantime, I know that Dr. Colon-Rivas has worked to mitigate some of the costs as well. So Dr. Colon-Rivas, if you can give us an update as to the last conversation we also had around how is it that we can really be more intentional with the work that they're doing?
So the Causeway agency has been working with the Choice Office for the last 3 years. What you have in front of you is a contract for $130,000. This was not, and I repeat, this was not the way we used to negotiate with them. I mean, like last year, it was $300,000.
In year one, it was $300,000, and year two, we spent about $288,000. So we're at the end of year three now. This vendor was selected 3 years ago through an RFP process. We're at the end of the 3 years, and we are requesting to continue for 1 more year to continue the marketing work that we've built with them. And so this $130,000 is just a fraction of the original budget that was passed a few years ago.
It is a fraction. They have been quite successful in the implementation of the marketing strategy, and that's it's a plus for our families. It's a plus for our families to know, the options, the information, the right information, and just to have clear communication around what we're offering.
Any questions? Any comments?
Well, it's a comment and a question. So in general, as I've expressed this a lot, like I'm concerned about, in general, having gone too far, a pendulum having swung too far in the school choice, balance of like choice and sort of guaranteed options, right? So in light of that, I'm curious to hear your explanation of like what are the goals of this, what were, I guess, the goals of this contract from 3 years ago? And then, like, how has it changed, like, specifically to what we're doing in this contract? And then how are we measuring it? Like, what are we looking to see happen?
So when we contracted with this vendor 3 years ago, we were moving forward with marketing and branding for our schools. And we have come a long way with this vendor in the sense of creating a unified brand, marketing and outreach, the involvement of the collateral materials that you may be familiar with, the resource guides, individual school brochures that each of our schools have, in addition to media plan. And so we really have come a long way with this vendor, and they understood our mission, and we would like the opportunity to continue with them given where we're moving with the district model for excellence, with the reconfiguration of certain schools, and just the marketing collateral materials that we would need to update and to the individual school brochures that we have for all of our schools. Some of those would have to change, some of those would have to be updated, as well as the resource guide, and just kind of finishing up just the last bit of work that we have with this agency. We've had measurable results over the years. We've had a variety of different types of marketing. We've had digital, we've had, like I said, the print materials, and with the goal of having families more understand the school selection process, the fact that we have magnet schools, the fact that we have non-magnet schools, the fact that we have open choice schools, and having families really understand the options and the differences between the schools.
Any other questions? No? Aisha? Mrs. Clark, excuse me.
So I guess I have kind of a comment and then a question. So with our, as rolled out, with our district enrollment, we see our enrollment going down. So I guess I'm concerned with how we're measuring that it's successful in that matter with the enrollment going down. And then secondly, since with the material that's already been done and created, I guess I'm concerned on for one more additional year, if we have that information and can't we just change it kind of in-house with knowing that essentially what you spoke on, they did a great job of providing that information and kind of providing the resources that we have, that if we can use now our district model of excellence to kind of implement what the changes are in-house versus now contracting out-house.
So I'll answer your first question first. With respect to the declining enrollment over the years. So this is really one of the reasons why we do need to market, is because we do have declining enrollment. And so we have, you know, we're a district with a portfolio of schools, and we have competitors, you know. I mean, there are other districts out there. There's CREC, for example, has magnet schools, and you know, families have options, and families need to know the difference between our schools and other partner schools. And so it's important for us to communicate that information in a clear and concise way. And so we don't want our enrollment to continue to decline, so we have to provide information and share information to the public so that they know what their options are. And with respect to your second question, updating the information in-house, we don't have the, at least our office doesn't have the capability to do that. The vendor that we've worked with has worked with us on the creative aspects of all of this material, and so the design and creative aspects of it. And so we would need the, I believe it's in design, or we would need the tools in-house to be able to do that. And what's involved in updating even those 48 brochures is, you may not seem it, but it is a lot of work, because the most minute thing that needs to be changed in any one of those brochures
we have to go in, update, make changes for each one of them, and it is very time consuming. So I don't see that that's something that we can do in-house, but.
Okay, thank you for that. I guess, just so, for clarity purpose for the first question, how are we seeing that this is something that's being utilized to its fullest potential, or that this agency as a whole is great for us if we are seeing a decline over the past 3 years? Well, 5 years, really.
So this agency has, like I said, they've worked with us for the past 3 years. So they've built a relationship with us. They've built understanding our mission and our vision. And in year one, they put a lot of effort into kind of a discovery phase of understanding our district as a whole, doing a lot of research. And so to me, not moving forward with this at this point, I feel that there's more work to be done. One of the things that we were planning on working with this agency on is, an attrition initiative in terms of doing some research and working on finding out, why we have attrition to the point where we do with some schools. And so, it's more than just brochures and materials. It's initiatives, it's research, it's surveying families that we've built with them.
Thank you.
Any other, Ms. Lambert?
Just one more. I guess it's sort of also to follow up on like a metric or whatever, and I always appreciate your candor, Marjorie. So one of the other things I'm curious, like, if we're measuring or how we're measuring, or maybe the answer is that we're not, but the compliance issue, and it's referenced in the contract, and it kind of speaks to the enrollment question as well. Like, I know that in some of our schools, we actually may have seen a significant increase in applicants, or I don't know, I know that's like a school by school thing over the last several years, but we haven't necessarily seen the increase in enrollment because, as we know, certainly, we have all these empty seats in schools where, in some of them, at least, like Capital Prep is an example, I spoke about in my report, and we have some study in our board materials tonight that references how that they have an increasing number of students in their waitlist every single year, but because of the racial composition of the waitlist, they're not actually able to accept any more students. So is this something that we're measuring? Because I guess when you look at a school like that, and again, I know it's school by school, I'm trying to understand the impact that this would have. It certainly seems like it could have had an impact to increase applicants, but is it a worthwhile investment when we can't actually enroll the applicants? So we're actually under contract with the State Department of Educational Regional School Choice Office to market particularly for our magnet schools. And so this funding is actually provided by the state. And so it's provided by the state in order to market our magnet schools for compliance reasons and to maintain the compliance ratio in our magnet schools. And so we are charged with doing that, and that has been part of our marketing throughout the years. We not only market to magnet schools, we've marketed all of our schools. We are one district with a portfolio of schools, and so we've marketed all of our schools. But there is a component that the state requires us to do, and that is to market the magnet schools for the purpose of compliance. And so that is something that we have done over the years with Classical and with Capital Prep and with some of the other non-compliant schools, for the purpose of trying to increase the compliance rate.
Any other questions? Any other comments? Again, I'll just keep mine brief. It doesn't seem to be working. And so I was going to ask you how we get out of this contract, but you just told me that we are obligated by the state to have this contract. So I guess my question is, so.
So.
Go ahead.
Well, that is, I believe when we discussed this in committee, I raised the question, I don't know if you've had any follow-up, like, it's not this contract, it's these funds that have to be used for this purpose, but like, what else could these, besides just a marketing contract with the marketing, is what else could the funds be used for?
We couldn't use these funds for anything else.
It's for marketing.
We would have to return these funds if we do not use it for this purpose.
So, I guess my question is, you're saying this is basically for magnet schools, so the neighborhood schools are just an add-on because we're one district?
What I'm saying is that the marketing campaign that we've built for the last 3 years has been for all of our schools. It's been for our entire district. And that the state provides us with a certain amount of money, and the purpose of the money that the state provides us is to market our magnet schools. But we market as a whole, we market all of our schools. We do outreach and recruitment for all of our schools.
I guess the reason why I ask is because I think that sort of perpetuates the inequities. So you're talking about a fully staffed magnet school like Pathways, and you're advertising that, and we're advertising that. But how do we advertise a Clark Street school that has a high concentration of needs, of special ed students, and is under-resourced? How do you advertise that equally?
We market all of our schools, as I mentioned. Each one of our schools have individual school brochures. Our resource guide provides information on all of our schools. Our website has information on all of our schools. When we have any of the marketing that has been done over the past 3 years has been for Hartford Public Schools. And we have collateral materials, open house cards for both magnet and district schools. So we are sure to always market our district schools, our entire district.
Here's my problem. There's a brochure, and it's talking about our district, and it has a picture of Enid Ray on it, not the superintendent. And so I have it in the car. I can take a recess.
I think that was from 2 years ago.
I know that. I've been holding it for this. Okay. I've been holding it because I haven't had a conversation. I haven't had a chance to address that. So my issue is, have we been? Oh, I'll say it again. There is a brochure. We have a brochure. 2 years ago it was a campaign, but it's still in the district. We're still pushing it. We're still advertising it. And there's a picture of Enid Ray on it, not the picture of the superintendent, whether it's Beth Neves or the current superintendent. And so I'm concerned about, if we're trying to promote our district and the whole district, that brochure really didn't emphasize neighborhood schools. And again, my thing is, I understand every school has their attributes and characteristics that are different and unique to that particular school. But if we are going to have a strategic campaign, a branding and marketing campaign, again, how do you successfully do that when the big elephant in the room is there's an equity. There's an equity in our system. We have a system that competes within a system that competes next to the system. So we have our inter-district magnets, we have the CREC, we have everything else. So we have a whole smorgasbord of things going on. And so I understand the need to brand and market, but how are we doing that without shooting ourselves in the foot? Because again, if I have an empty bottle here and this is Clark Street School, then I have a full bottle, everyone's going to choose this bottle of water, not this one. And so how are we making sure, what matrix do we have that we've imposed, self-imposed, if any, that to my colleague's point, measuring the success of it, measuring the impact of it, measuring how not just the families in the outer greater Hartford area, but how our own particular families in district feel about this. Because again, I really believe that we should be marketing, but this is kind of like a exercise in futility. This is not helping us holistically, and I know that's not your fault. So don't think that I'm blaming you for it. But I guess I'm just trying to understand, how do we move the needle? Because we can't stay here. We have to transition to a different strategy and a different campaign. Now, I'm not saying that we can't use this company, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it, but we do have a radio station and we do have a TV station, so we do have the ability to market our schools and market our system, and do that in meetings and everything else. So my question is, have we considered those avenues and trying to figure out how the state can release this 130 to just give it to us for the sake of giving it to us?
So, Mr. Chairman, I agree with what you're saying. I think we have a good opportunity. We have a good opportunity with the district model for excellence right now. I mean, we have been talking about pathways. We have been talking about giving the opportunity for parents to really understand how we're restructuring our district. So I believe that working with the marketing firm this year and adding those components to the marketing piece will help and will support the communication. I mean, the clear communication that we need with parents. It's a matter of informing families. It's a matter of letting them know what we offer. The choice team actually does a great job in including everyone. I mean, this is just not for magnet school families. I mean, it's for every family that is within the city of Hartford. So I think I see it as I think that we need to take a look at what Ms. Glenville is actually mentioning in terms of create clear ways in which we can measure gains. But also I see a good opportunity in having the firm working with us and understanding Hartford and understanding our needs and understanding our families, and then moving forward, at least for this year, and then overlapping the DME over all the work that we have to do.
I don't know. All right, I'm not going to over debate it because we are completely late. So the Office of School Choice seeks to continue the partnership with Causeway Agency in order to continue to deepen its message and reach of information to reach all families, particularly those who may be underrepresented in the school selection process. The Hartford Board of Education authorized the superintendent to execute a contract with Causeway Agency for the term delineated in the contract ending June 30th, 2019, and a cost not to exceed $130,000. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved and second. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No. No.
I heard 2 no's. Okay. All right, I heard 2 no's, and the motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, that was actually kind of exciting. Yeah, I kind of want to relive that. Item number 5, acceptance of funds, UConn/Wallace Foundation, $316,250. The board approves the NAG School of Education/UConn has a 4-year Wallace Foundation grant to partner with 3 districts, Hartford, New Haven, and Meriden, focused on improving leadership development and pre-service principal preparation programs. Hartford will be supported with funds from UConn to assist us in building a leadership track system, as well as strengthening our interdistrict leadership program, development programs. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, this is an exciting partnership that we have with not only Wallace, but our partners at UConn, NEAG School of Education. And so we'll be able to further develop our programs that support our aspiring and emerging school leaders. We want to make sure that we continue to build our leadership pipeline. And this is a great resource for us, not only with regard to the fact that they do provide additional funding for us, but we do have access to not only partner districts in the state, but also throughout the nation as well. There are other districts that have started to do very impressive work and have had a track record of doing this work for 5-10 years around building leadership pipelines and building leadership pipelines that reflect the population that is being served. And so not only will this allow us to build and enhance professional learning, but it will also help build our data infrastructure. We know that we want to tackle our priority around operational effectiveness, and so this allows us an opportunity to build a data management tool, not only to monitor hiring, retention, recruitment efforts, but also around our professional learning and leadership development into one database. So great opportunity for us to continue this partnership.
Okay. All right. So let me just read this. The Hartford Board of Education authorized the superintendent to accept funds in the amount of $316,250 from the University of Connecticut NAG School of Education. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of authorizing the superintendent to accept these funds, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes carry. Motion carries. All right. Item number 6. This is the first read, so we don't necessarily have to take any action on it. And Ms. Taylor is not here to read it. I don't know, Ms. Glanville, if you want to speak to it, or Ms. Clark, if you want to speak to it really quickly. No? Nothing? No, you don't have to read it.
to read it.
No, right, I realize that. But
Well, let me,
yes, because none of us are members of the committee, so I didn't know
I
you
mean, I'll
wanted to
just
speak
say,
to
I'm
it.
sure that Ms. Taylor would want it to be said that these are all part of the ongoing OTA work. These are like safety policies. It's, really urgent that these be moving forward. So, and the policy committee was very proud of ourselves that we were able to get 3 of them on a first reading.
Correct. Anything to add?
No, just to make sure that we're following all the procedures that were outlined in the OCA report.
Okay, dokie. So we don't have to take any action on that. So it doesn't require a vote. It's the first read. So what I'm going to do now is move to the consent agenda, and I'm going to introduce a motion to take the entire consent agenda up as one item. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to take the consent agenda up as one item. All in favor of taking the consent agenda up as one item, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the ayes carry. Now, all in favor, is there a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of passing the consent agenda as one item, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes carry. Before I even bang the gavel, though, I do have to say one thing. Amanda made a comment about lunch, the portions not being enough, and that was before our wonderful director was here, so she did not get a chance to hear you make that comment. And so I just want to make sure that you guys connect at some point after this meeting. So with all that, okay, all right, good. All right, just wanted to make sure, because I have athletes. All right, so great. So the motion has been made and carried. The motion is consent agenda passed. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is it moved? Is there a second?
Second.
Is it moved and seconded? All in favor to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes carried. We stand in adjournment.